Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kyle's Corner after a brief hiatus. I am joined by my good friend and lovely booktuber, Vera. How are you doing today, Vera? Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm so good, Kyle. Just before we started, like an hour ago, I sent Kyle a photo of me power napping. So, I'm alive and refreshed. So
Yeah, exactly. You need some coffee, is what you do. Do you drink coffee?
I do, but if I drink coffee now, then I won't fall asleep, and I need to be in the hospital at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So
Oh, yeah,
I
that's fair.
have to
Yeah. See,
sleep.
it's still early in the day for me, so we have some big fans here.
Oh my
Vera
God,
says
I
that you're
love
her
her.
favorite booktuber. Yeah, we have
I
Tom
love
here.
her.
Tom, how's it going? Nice to see you.
I agree with everything Tom says, by the way.
Yeah, Tom's great. Good dude. The only thing I don't agree with Tom for is that he never rereads. Crazy, Tom. You should start doing that. Do you do rereads?
Yeah, I do. Like I reread The Catcher in the Rye every time that I'm like majorly depressed.
Interesting. I was gonna I was gonna talk to you about Catcher in the Rye, but I guess we'll do it now because you mentioned it. That's my most hated novel of all time.
Okay, Kyle, it was so nice to be here
I know,
on
yeah.
stream.
Goodbye, goodbye. But
See ya.
but what I wanted to ask you is, I actually had watched your video where you said that it was one of your favorite books of all time, and you got very emotional during that
Yeah.
video. So, like, what is it about that book that speaks to you so much? Because I did not have that experience, but it has been 16 years since I read it. So, like, I could have totally different opinions if I read it now.
Yeah, so I think the thing with The Catcher in the Rye is that if you see yourself in Holden, it will like be life-changing for you. If you don't see yourself in Holden, you'll think that Holden is annoying and stupid, and then you'll hate the book, which fair enough. I see myself like I am Holden, and not
Right.
not in all aspects, but like I see myself in Holden, and I feel like the best books that we read act like mirrors. And I kind of talked about this with um, Philip Chase on his channel like a week ago, and I think The Little Prince by Antoine de
Right. Yeah.
Saint-Exupéry.
I read
I
that
know
this
I
year.
say that wrong. I know I
Yeah.
say that wrong, but like every time I reread that book, I come away with something different. And The Catcher in the Rye, I find that every time I reread it, I get something new out of it. I'm just trying to pull up my Goodreads review of it because I like to document like a passage that really stuck with me. But Holden, I feel like it's the story of Holden as he's starting to grow up and he's starting to lose this visage of reality where everything is meaningful, and the adults know everything always. And he's starting to kind of like see past that and realize that you know there is no intrinsic meaning to any of this. And so he calls everything phony because he's like, well, it's phony that this, for example, this guy is so mean and so rude, and he plays all these girls, and yet because he has this like status amongst like the other teenagers, all the girls will still want to be with him, even though like he's so like evil. And he tries to, and there, or for example, the quote that stuck with me this time was among other things, you'll find that you're not the first person who was ever confused and frightened and even sickened by human behavior. You're by no means alone on that score. You'll be excited and stimulated to know. Many, many men have been just as troubled morally and spiritually as you are right now. Happily, some of them kept records of their troubles. You'll learn from them if you want to. Just as someday, if you have something to offer, someone will learn something from you. It's a beautiful reciprocal arrangement. And it isn't education, it's history, it's poetry. And like that is the passage that really spoke to me when I read it this past November because I was really depressed. And um, but it, the thing that this passage leads into is his old like history professor, I think, and trying to like assault him at night. And so it's just him. It's him coming face to face with the realization that the world, it's not what it appears at first sight, and you can't really trust everything that you see. And you kind of have to find the meaning in it all for yourself. Like I see a very like existential underlying philosophy to it. I really like existentialism, so maybe I just see it in everything that I like. But um, but this I but he keeps being confronted with the fact that fact. Sorry, fact. Sometimes my tongue doesn't, the accent pops in and stuff. But so he's just he comes face to face with the fact that things don't have this intrinsic meaning. Everything is phony until you give it a meaning, and you can choose what is impactful to you or not. Another quote, sorry if I'm rambling.
No, I love this because I don't remember any of this stuff from the book, so it's really interesting to me.
Another quote that kind of like I think is the final realization that he comes to, but this is the most famous quote I think from this book, so it's not really a spoiler. Anyway, I keep picturing all these kids. Oh, by the way, because The Catcher in the Rye is being told from 17-year-old Holden's point of view, and he's telling us the story of his 16-year-old self a year ago. And by the time that we meet him, Holden is in this like psychiatric hospital or something like that. Anyway, he's being like treated for like mental illness and stuff, and I think like depression. And he says to us, anyway, I keep picturing all these kids playing some game in this big field of rye and all. Thousands of little kids, and nobody's around. Nobody big, I mean, except me. And I'm standing on the edge of some crazy cliff. What I have to do, I have to catch everybody if they start to go over the cliff. I mean, they're running and they don't look where they're going, and I have to come out from somewhere and catch them. That's all I'd do all day. I'd just be the catcher in the rye and all. I know it's crazy, but that's the only thing I'd really like to be. I know it's crazy. And what he's talking about here is that he wants to catch and preserve this childlike innocence that we have, because so much is lost when we grow up, and it, the Little Prince talks about it as well, the fact that the pilot, when the Little Prince crashes onto the desert planet, I believe, and the pilot crashes into the desert, and he finds the Little Prince at the very start, and the Little Prince comes up to him with this drawing and says, "What do you see in this drawing?" And the pilot says, "Oh, it's a hat." And then the Little Prince is so disappointed because it's obviously an elephant that has been eaten by a boa. And so that's kind of also an example of, the Little Prince is kind of the childlike innocence and just imagination and all of that. And the pilot at the start of the Little Prince represents the adult that has forgotten the child that they used to be. And what Holden is saying in this quote that I read to you is that it's so important to him to preserve that like childhood innocence, and that is just so tragic that people, go over that metaphorical cliff and they lose that innocence, and it's so sad. And I really resonate with that, as well, because there are some things that like happen to all of us, I'm sure, right? And some things that have happened to me that like I wish they didn't, because I think that they killed something in me. And there are some things that, I think kill that little child in all of us. And it's just really sad. And yeah, I just get really emotional over that book for that reason. But then the last sentence, I promise this is the end. If you bring up The Catcher in the Rye, I can't stop talking about it.
This is good. This is what I brought it up for a reason.
But the last sentence that Holden tells us in the book, and I always mess this up, but it's something along the lines of, never tell anyone, never tell anything about anyone, never tell anything about anybody, because then you'll start missing everybody. And it's the idea of no matter how awful things are, and no matter how lost you feel, no matter how alone you feel, no matter how you feel that no one is noticing you. And I think that love is an act of noticing. Holden repeats in this book, nobody ever notices anything. But at the end of the day, he says, if you tell the story, your story, you will have some nostalgia for those parts as well. You will start missing elements of them, right? And so the fact that you are here, you should cherish those things, because things will pass. In my favorite poem by Wisława Szymborska, it's called Nic dwa razy, translates to nothing twice. She's this Polish poet. One of the final stanzas is, "Why did you evil hour, come and mess with the mood?" I don't really know how to translate it well. And then it says, "You're here, therefore you shall pass. You shall pass, and therefore you are beautiful." And I find so much comfort in that. And so I hope you're kind of, I know I'm not very
Well, first of all, guys,
concise and stuff, but
this essay on the Catcher in the Rye was brought to you 20 minutes after she woke up from a nap. So think about how much more she could have said if she like planned to talk about it. So, but that being said, like, look, I've told people I've hated that book for a long time, and the people who love it always viciously defend it, and I'm like, well, why do you like it? And they mostly are just like, because it's just like so good, and they're just like, yeah, but like Holden, like, you know, he's like depressed and lost, and I'm just like, yeah, you guys aren't selling it. And so I will tell you that what you just told me is like why we read books, like, you know, like that is like I could hear your voice breaking when you're talking about this book and how meaningful it is to you. And I will say you are the first person that has ever made me consider rereading this book. So that is a genuine compliment, because
thank you.
even the quotes you said, I was like, wow, those actually sound pretty good. But my memory of the book is literally just him saying the word phonies like 100 times in a row. But I also know that when you're forced to read something in school, it's like you creates that resistance and you don't want to read it to begin with. So I don't think it was the greatest reading experience to begin with.
Yeah, I think I was so lucky. English teachers have always been like the most important like figures in my life, like academically, I think. My sixth grade English teacher, it was like social studies and English together, called humanities, and he took myself and my good friend at the time aside, and he was like, guys, you're like better than this class. There's no point that you should be reading the same books. You should read, and here's like a list of books that I think could help you expand your reading. And we would like read these books, and then we'd have like a mini book club with this teacher. And he's the best teacher I've ever had. And at age 12, he had me read The Catcher in the Rye for the first time. And it changed my life. So, and it's the book that I always turn to find comfort. I think it's
That's
very
awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's like, you know, I always return to A Song of Ice and Fire when I'm like needing just like a quick read, or Harry Potter. And yeah, like the things happening in The Song of Ice and Fire are like super dark and depressing and terrible.
Oh, because
But
you see yourself in Ramsay Bolton, right?
absolutely, he's my
Yeah,
homie. Yeah.
I
But it's
totally
just like
see it.
comforting to me, you know, like to just read about all these deaths and dismemberments and stuff. So, but you know, Belltube here said, never let her read The Magicians and sway you. And rest assured, Brian, nothing will sway me against The Magicians. Because I read that when I was an adult with a full brain. Like 16-year-old Kyle didn't know what was going on. So, you know, have you read The Magicians? Am I criticizing another one of your favorites?
No, but I know that Brian. Yeah, I know that Brian is really against it. So
Oh yeah, I famously hated it last year. It was absolutely just a trash book, I think. But we had Joanna here for a little bit, and she said that your connection to literature resonates with her so much, which I think is very true.
Joanna's one of the people that I look up to on like YouTube.
Joanna's
If any
fantastic.
of
Everything she has to say is fantastic.
Oh, and I
We have
love Esme
Esme
as well.
here, and Belltube is on Tom's side for the no rereads. So, all right, Ryan. But anyway, what I was going to start with before Catcher in the Rye came up, and we had to go into Vera's whole backstory here, which was fantastic, was what really got you into reading, which you kind of already talked about with your teacher there. Was there anything that specifically got you more interested in fantasy as you were getting older, or like did that wait until you were an adult?
No, no, no. So actually, that was like already way into my reading journey, the thing with the
Oh, gotcha.
teacher. So I actually started reading like before I could read. My mom would read me um, these books, these picture books, and there are videos of me. And I'm gonna ask my dad if he could send them to me because I know he has them. Because we watch them like on my birthday if I'm ever in Poland. But he's and it's those videos of my mom starting the sentence and I'm in bed with her and I'm like reciting the book from memory. And so
That's
that's kind
awesome.
of how I started reading. And then I was kind of reading like pretty much all my life. And so, like, when people ask me, when did you start reading? It's quite a difficult answer because, like, I was reading the fairy books when I was in like pre-K and kindergarten and Magical Tree House. I love the Magic Tree House. And then, you know, the series of unfortunate events. I lied about reading Harry Potter because I wanted to seem cool. But yeah, those are stories that I've told like a million times. And so, but yeah, so I kind of always been reading. And then fantasy specifically, I think I had my awakening around age like 10 or 11. So, and that was mostly with the Books of Beginning trilogy by John Stevens. Um, Shout out to him. It was the first time I had to wait for a book to come out. I
Oh,
don't know if you've
geez.
ever heard of them.
I actually haven't. No, yeah.
Yeah, and then Aragon. And I forced my assistant teacher, she was so lovely, but I forced her to learn the elfish greeting. And so I would do the Atra Esternion Otheldiun, and then she would do Atra Mornar something something. I don't remember her part, but like we'd always do it. And I was a menace. So
Did you have to wait for the Aragon books to be released too, or were they all out? Because I remember them coming out as I was a kid,
no.
and I never read them.
No, I think they were all out. I think they were
Nice.
all out. I don't remember, but I think they were all out. Yeah. And then I
And
wrote sorry.
sorry, go ahead. I was just
Oh,
gonna ask
and
when The
then
Witcher came into your reading journey because I feel like that's like a big part of your like current reading identity. Like when I think of you, I associate you with The Witcher.
good, good. You know, that's good branding, my friend. Good branding. um, yeah, The Witcher is the most important series in my life. It's not my favorite, but it is my most important, and that's why I think the most passionate about it because it is so important to me. So I kind of I remember watching my dad play the video games when I was younger. Like Witcher 1, both like my uncle
You
and
are so
um,
young. That's a ridiculous statement, but okay.
yeah. But yeah, I remember him playing the games and in The Witcher 1, the way it starts is Kaer Morhen is being attacked by Salamandra. And at some point, Triss walks down like the main entrance to Kaer Morhen, and her boobies are out. And I remember, like, my biggest memory of that is just being scandalized. I was like, why is this like redheaded chick with her like, you know, I was so scandalized. I was like, this
Is
is
this
bad.
The Witcher 3 or is this Witcher 2?
No, this is The Witcher 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And then and so that's like my earliest memory of The Witcher. So the Triss hate started really early. By the way, are you Team Triss or Yen?
Oh, do you not know this about me? I don't like The Witcher. I thought you knew. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to spring that on you. I'm so sorry.
Kyle.
But I've
It's
always
okay.
said, I know I'm hitting you off the gate with 1, 2, just like you can end this at any time. It's all good. Um,
No, I won't. I won't.
but no, I actually I'm glad that you started talking about The Witcher on your channel so much because I've actually, except for your the 2 hour video, I've only watched half of it, but I've watched all of your other
Oh,
Witcher videos, and I really like them because I've always suspected there was a lot lost in translation. And you've like, and even when you were on Brian's channel, you like went into some of the differences and you've talked about them in some of your videos. And like, I do think that part of the reason that I struggled with them is they read both simultaneously like too dry, but then also like very philosophical.
they are
Um,
very philosophical.
And like I liked some of the dialogue in it, and I really like Geralt, Geralt. I don't know how to say it.
Geralt.
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 Yeah.
It's a soft
But I,
G.
I'm
It's
sorry.
okay.
Everybody says it wrong, so I always second guess. But I really hated the end of Time of Contempt. That was what really did it for me because I actually really liked the short stories. Blood of Elves was like good. Like I didn't love it. It was okay. And then Time of Contempt I didn't really like, and I really, really hate the end
Fine,
of Time
because
of
I
Contempt.
hated it. I hated it the first time I read it. Like I hated Time of Contempt. I was like, what is this? And also the ending of Time of Contempt, loads of people don't like it. But also loads of people go into The Witcher expecting it to be about Geralt and like Geralt
And I
dealing with
did for
stuff.
sure. Yeah.
And that's not at all what it's about. It's told from Geralt's perspective, most of it. But when you actually think what it's about, it's not like it's about
Yeah.
Ithlinne's
It's about.
prophecy, and Ithlinne's prophecy is about Ciri, not about Geralt. So
I do like The
it's the
Witcher
story of
3.
oh
I
yeah,
did
The
really
Witcher
like
3 is
that game. Yeah.
brilliant.
And
Yeah,
in that game, I like Yennefer more. So, and in the 2.5 books that I read, I liked Yennefer more. So, I guess I'm
yes,
Team Yennefer if I have to pick a side.
good. That's the only correct choice. But yeah, no. I for the first time, I read the books for the first time either in I think in seventh grade. I think yeah, in seventh grade, I think I read it the first Witcher book for the first time, and then I read it again in eighth grade because we had to. Oh, but the first time I read it, I only got through half of it because like Polish is a really hard language, and I really have trouble like concentrating when I read Polish, if that makes sense. Um, like I'm fine. Like it is my first language, so like I speak it at home. I like that's not the issue. It's just for some reason I've always had trouble focusing. I have the same when I read Jane Austen actually. I can't focus. Like obviously I speak English, I read English, but when I read Jane Austen I'm like you know what I
Why do
mean?
you think that is? Is it just the way the prose for that particular author is, or like have you?
Yeah, with Jane Austen, I think it's just her prose. For some reason, my eyes go all wobbly. With The Witcher, I don't have that problem anymore now. It also might be because I needed to get glasses because I have like
Oh,
astigmatism and I have like very slight pluses, but and I didn't know that at the time. But so that might have been a factor. But then I read it for fully for the first time in eighth grade because we had to read it for Polish class.
that's interesting that
Um,
they made you read it in class. It's awesome.
well, it is a very important text for like Poland, and
I
it
know, but I
is
just
very
feels like it would be too R-rated for school, I guess. But I'm thinking of
I
like,
wouldn't
the
say
American
so.
school system where
Yeah,
like, they're just like you can't say or do anything that insinuates anything. So,
like Holden goes and meets up with a prostitute, so like
yeah, but that was written in like, the 1950s or whatever, so it's important and with a capital I.
well, this was written in the 80s, so
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
also important. But yeah, I really think it's so brilliant. And then we had to analyze the third short story, which is The Lesser Evil. And so like that was my
That's a great short story.
yeah,
That's
it's really
actually
good.
what I think, that one or the one with like when he meets Ciri's parents. Those are, I think, my two favorite short stories.
Oh, really? That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Um, solid choices.
D-
My favorites are kind of basic because I like the titular short stories the most. Um,
Yeah, I mean, The Last Wish is also
yeah,
really good. What is the other one? What is the other
The Sword of
title?
Destiny.
That one was okay, I think. I don't really remember that one as well, so it must not have stood out to me as much.
It's right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really love I really love it, and it's very important to me because I don't know it like it just feels like home to me, and it feels I get really disappointed when things about it are like misinterpreted or when like my culture is removed from it because it's like okay so you're saying that like all European culture is the same like
Right.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean and I feel like
Hmm.
Poland historically has just been not in the best place, if only like geographically we're speaking. We disappeared off the map for 123 years, thanks to Russia, Prussia, and Austro-Hungary. Then we win our freedom back for 20 years, and then World War II happens. We are the first to get invaded, and and then the Soviet Union. We become a satellite state. The agreement is called the Warsaw Pact. I'm from Warsaw, and it's like, well, yeah, it's the Warsaw Pact because it was like signed in Warsaw or whatever. But like I know if 444 is watching this, he's gonna be like, actually, but he's great, so he actually knows everything. He might correct me, but like it's called the Warsaw Pact, but like Poland never wanted to, like we didn't want to be part of the Soviet Union. We were the first to like fight and like leave it, and we managed to leave it by protesting, with the solidarity movement and Lech Wałęsa and everything. And then people still are like, well, actually you're Eastern Europe, and we're like, well, that's great, like what do we do this for? And so that's why like I'm very like protective over it as well. But I do understand that like it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to just listen to Geralt monologue forever. And what you said, it comes across as incredibly dry in English, when like in Polish it's basically a comedy. So
yeah, I think that's so interesting that like there's so much comedy that's removed from it. It really like makes me rethink how translated works look, like based on, because like I tried reading Crime and Punishment last year, and I got like 25% of the way into it. Like I had no issues with it. I just got busy and then didn't continue. But I thought the prose was like pretty dry, which I'm like, it's from the 1800s. That's all fine. And then I saw somebody else post like a newer translation of it, like just a clip, and I was like, wow, this like reads so much better to me. So I do think that like I have to start paying more attention to which translations I read when there's more available, because it makes such a difference. It seems like, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I actually had a similar thing with Crime and Punishment. I think maybe I was just too young to read it, and like fair enough. I think there is such a thing as, not being ready to read a certain book, which is fine. And I just like I got like halfway into it, I think, and I just couldn't really continue. Not because I didn't like it, just because I was kind of bored, and I was like, okay, well, the thing that I was here for already happened, and now we're getting into other stuff that I don't care about.
Right.
But yeah, I think that I might actually reread it in Polish because, Russian and Polish are more similar than like Russian and English. But that being said, we don't use the Cyrillic alphabet. A bunch of people send me comments like with the Cyrillic alphabet, and I think that it's because they think that because Poland is Eastern Europe. Sorry, I get so triggered over this. They think that we use the Cyrillic alphabet. We're actually Central Europe, and we don't use the Cyrillic alphabet. But anyway, our languages are still more similar because we are both, like Slavic languages. And so I'm thinking that I might try Dostoevsky in Polish, especially since I want to read The Idiot, Notes from the Underground, The Brothers Karamazov one day. I loved White Nights. I really recommend White Nights.
Nice. I got the there was like an audio collection of like all of Dostoevsky's works, and it's like 160 hours or something. But the reason I got it is A, it was one credit, and B, I liked like pretty much all of the audiobook narrators, and so I kind of want to go through and just start working on his smaller ones, and then work up, because I really want to read Brothers Karamazov. Like I've heard great things, and it sounds like a book that I would really like, but I don't have enough like seepage into Russian culture. Like I know like people have like a first name, a last name, and like a nickname, and then they like go between them or something like that. Any people who know Russian stuff better than me, I'm sorry if I'm saying the wrong thing, but it just seems like I need some cultural context to kind of get through that one.
It's kind of like, I don't know, with the name like Richard, you can be like, oh yeah, Richard, Richie, Dick, and and stuff like that. And so that's kind of one part of it. And then another part of it is sometimes in Eastern European, because we don't do this in Poland or in Slovakia or in the Czech Republic, from what I know. But they do this thing where like you'll have the first name, but then you'll want to indicate like from which family you are, and so you can be called like I don't know, if my dad's name was Peter, then I'd be like Vera Petrovna, or sometimes referred to as that, but that's just to indicate like whose family I'm from. We do sometimes do it kind of in Polish, but like we don't actually do it. We just do it kind of like colloquially. It's not a thing in the language, but like in the like as students. And we wouldn't do it like to say, oh yeah, this person is from like this is their father or something like that. We wouldn't do it that way. But sometimes it's just, you know, like colloquially you would say, oh, I'm going to, I don't know, Olchakova's class. And then like the teacher's surname could be Olchak. And then we just say Olchakova because, you know, it's just like a nickname. Right. But like we don't do that because we're not Eastern Europe.
So that's the takeaway today, everybody. Poland is not Eastern Europe.
We are Central. If you look
David
at our...
David had a question earlier that I've been meaning to get back to. Have you been swayed to looking for more meanings and themes in sci-fi fantasy than pure enjoyment since you started evolving as a reader with more lit fic?
I kind of have been... it's not that I really went from one into the other. I kind of have been reading both simultaneously. In my failed booktube era in 2016, don't worry, all the videos are privated, so you will not find them. But in my failed booktube era in 2016, I credit Wagget's Tale, which is, well, it is told from a dog's point of view, but Kate DiCamillo's Because of Winn-Dixie, Charlotte's Web, those are realistic fiction, and I was like reading them alongside, you know, Percy Jackson and stuff, so I wouldn't really say that I transitioned from one to another. I just kind of have been reading both of them simultaneously. But yeah, like what I find the most kind of like interesting is to, you know, Joe Abercrombie in his recent interview with Tudor Ramble said that he is perhaps more interested in the thing that, not in the things that separate fantasy from every other genre, but he's more so interested in what fantasy has in common with all the other genres. And I think I agree with that. I just think fantasy is like such an interesting vehicle for those things because it's, you can kind of throw out like realism out the window because you define what realism is. And so right. Does that make sense? I hope that answers the question.
No, I totally agree because like, you know, I'm about to start a book club at my workplace. Ooh, and they like one other person reads like sci-fi fantasy and the other people, as far as I know, don't really. And everybody's gonna like choose a book and stuff. And, you know, some people I know are like kind of hesitant to read fantasy. And I've just been thinking about like ways to get them to read like quote unquote more palatable fantasy. And I'm like, you know, like the thing about fantasy that is so good is just that like people try to, like, if you don't read fantasy, you tend to think of it as this like othering thing. But there's so many different facets to fantasy. Exactly. And you get to decide, like, there can be one element of fantasy in the book, and that could just be like some guy's dreams or something. So it's like, I don't know. It's a very accepting genre, and I think people don't like our community, but like other people don't give it that sort of credit.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. And like, do I like to get in the weeds? Like, do I watch every single book board video that's like everything you missed in Wind and Truth? Yes. But I wouldn't say that my draw to fantasy is because I'm like, I need to learn everything about every single magic. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, it is a factor, but it's not. And it's probably the thing that makes me stay and that makes me obsessed with the series. But it's not the thing that is the initial draw for me. Does that make sense?
For sure. Yeah. What would you say is like are you more of a thematic depth kind of reader, or like if there was like the most important thing to a book to you, is it like your personal connection to it? Is it themes? Is it character? Are you? I would say I'm going to hazard a guess you're not a plot driven reader, but some.
I mean, so I actually was trying to figure this question out in 2021. And I ran this experiment where every single month, also in 2021, I was crazy because I read 100 pages, at least for the first like 6 months or so. I read 100 pages every single day. I would wake up at 5 a.m.
Wow. And you were still in med school at the time? Like that was during your school?
No. I was in high school at the time.
Oh, okay. Still impressive. Maybe even more impressive because high school students really need that sleep. I would never get up at 5.
So that's why I stopped. But yeah, I had a routine where I would wake up at 5, I'd read 100 pages. At 6:30, I would do my makeup, and at 7:20, I'd be on the bus, to get to school. So, but I don't do that anymore. Geez. Sorry, what was the question? I get so distracted. It's bad.
What do you think? You were trying to figure out like what kind of reader you are, like the thing.
Yeah.
That's
So
most
the answer
important
is
to
I
you.
don't know. I don't know. I
Okay.
think because I've read books that it's just philosophy and it's just themes, and I'm like, well, I don't care, because why would I care about these abstract things? Then I read books that is, oh yeah, we're building the characters, guys. Shout out to The Blade itself. Kind of mid. Joe Abercrombie's my favorite author, and The First Thought is my favorite series, but The Blade itself is kind of mid. I'm so
I like the
lame.
blade. I like the blade itself quite a bit, but I get why it's a struggle for some people. Like if I was to rank First Law, it's like probably my third last or something like that. So
Yeah. And and I think that's like a pretty heavy character book. And I was kind of like, yeah, this isn't really like for me either. And then The Sunlit Man. Have you read The Sunlit Man?
yep.
I'd say that one's like pretty plot heavy, the
Mm-hmm.
ball's always rolling. Haha, wink wink. Not gonna say what the ball is for the people in the audience that haven't read it, but I hope you
No, I
catch
got
my
it. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I have a really cringe sense of humor as well. I'm sorry.
I work with a lot of 20-year-olds and 22-year-olds and however old you are, I get
21.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew you were around there, so
Yeah. And so that was too much for me as well. I was like, well, I want a bit more with the characters, and I want a bit more like stuff to chew on, So for me, I kind of feel like I want my book to kind of get all these. I prefer a book that does okay in a lot of. Wait, no. Okay. So after Bookborn did her interview thing with Tudor Ramble, I had like a major Tudor Ramble phase. Still love them. I had a major Tudor Ramble phase like around a year ago, because I would have to walk up and down a hill to get to my college for 40 minutes. And every morning I'd be like, da, 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 like I'd be there like, let's go.
yeah.
And when they did theirs, Bookborn, she was like pointing out holes in their like rating system, and
I love that. That was the greatest when
that was so good.
Austin was like, I have this rating system. It's all of these things, and the perfect book is Golden Sun. And Bookborn's like, Golden Sun? Fantastic. 10 out of 10. But continue what
Yeah.
you're saying.
I love your impression of Austin. Wait, do you have a Richard? Do you have a Richard impression? You can be like,
No,
Lonesome Dove is the
because
best.
yeah, because Richard's more chill. He's just more like, guys, Lonesome Dove is the best book. Like I like he doesn't like Austin's way more over the top, so he's easier to caricaturize. I met those guys at Dragonsteel. They are both extremely awesome.
Yeah. But she was poking holes in their system, because their system before was that they would average all the ratings for like, oh my god, Steve Canada is such a legend, by the way. He was one of my first subscribers. He found me in like my second video. Shout out to Steve Canada and your mom.
Wow,
I
nice.
hope you're both doing well and that your appointment went well, Steve.
Wow. Hello, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
He's such a legend. I love him. But anyway, as I was saying, so they used to average their score for like all their categories into one. And Bookburn was like, but that's so stupid, because some like books, like the point is to focus more on character. And for some books, like obviously the plot is more important. And for some of them, theme is more important. So like you can't just like average all of them. You can't penalize a book for not having a plot if the point wasn't that it was supposed to have like a high stakes plot, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, she's so smart. And Rich and Austin thought that too. And they were like, okay, changing the system. So what they do now is they have like an overall score, but they weigh the categories differently based on like the book and like what they think suits the book the best. And I think I kind of do the same thing, but I don't like but I don't keep my categories like rigid. Does that make sense? I don't know.
No,
I
I
always
think we're
just
pretty.
switch my answers.
No. I think we have a pretty similar view. So like how I've described it in the past is I kind of like subconsciously view like four important pillars to what a book can be. And it's like character, plot, writing, and theme. And any of those one pillars can be like really poor and the structure will still stand. And maybe two of them can be a little bit weaker as long as the other two are still really strong. But if you're missing like two of the four pillars, it doesn't matter how strong the other two are, it tends to fall down. Like that's the kind of the analogy that I've created for myself, because I think a lot of people they post hoc what kind of reader they are, and it's natural. I've done it. We've all done it. But what happens is they pick up they pick up The Expanse, just as an example, because I can see an Expanse book next to me, and they read it and they don't really like it. And The Expanse is plot driven. And then they pick up, The Sunlit Man, and it's plot driven, and they don't really like it. So like, I guess I'm not really a plot driven reader, but really it's just like two specific things about those books that they didn't like as much. But now they've had this identity that they've now created an identity that they are a plot driven, that they aren't a plot driven reader. So then when they go out and they read a book that starts off with a lot of plot, they're working against this self identity that they've already created. And so they're like, yeah, I'm not really a plot reader, so like why would I care about this? And I'm speaking generally, of course, like every reader is going to be different, but I think this happens a lot. And then same with character, where people are like, I really like character, and then if a book isn't giving you a lot of character up front, you might then be like, well, I don't really care about these characters, so why do I like this book? I see that all the time. People will be like, yeah, I'm a character reader and I'm just not vibing with these characters, so like I don't really like the book yet. And it's like, sure, like I as somebody who does really appreciate character, do wish books with less character focus had more. But there's usually something else I can appreciate about a book if it's good, or if it's just something that speaks to me, right? So I do think we tend to fall into a little bit more of a binary unconsciously, when it's reality there's all sorts of different factors that go into a book. So I'm glad that you didn't just stick to one and you're just like, it kind of depends on what the book's doing.
I love your analogy, and I might steal it next time someone
Yeah,
asks
go
me a
ahead.
similar
Absolutely.
question. I'll credit you, of course, but yeah, I will be stealing that because I love that. Yeah, recently I just finished this book called The Ice Palace by, I'm so sorry to any Norwegian writer, any Norwegian viewers. 2 seconds, I have it right here. It's actually beautiful. The cover is so pretty. I hope this one over here, by
I've seen that cover before.
I don't know if I say it right though. But I just finished this book and it's so beautiful. Does it have a compelling plot? It's fine. Does it have beautiful writing? Yes. Does it have beautiful atmosphere? Yes. Are the characters amazing? They're not like 10 out of 10, but they are very solid, like 8, and and thematically, the theme ties them all together. And I think that this is a great book, and such an achievement. And why should I mark it down for not having like the craziest plot of all time if that's never what it was aiming to be?
For sure.
Then again,
Sometimes it's
this
just
guy
good
was
at knowing your
nominated.
mood.
Sorry, I was going to make a joke that then again, this guy was nominated for 30 times for the Nobel Prize and didn't win. So maybe he should have added some like explosions and stuff. But that's a joke.
He was nominated 30 times for the Nobel Prize?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Over here, it says...
Poor dude. 31st time, like, needs to be the time. Have you read any Han Kang yet?
Who?
Han Kang is a South Korean author. She just won the Nobel Prize for Literature like in 2024. She has like, I think she has a lot of books, but she has like 6-ish that are translated to English, maybe 7. The most popular being Human Acts and The Vegetarian. And those are like by far, yeah. So those are by far her 2 most famous ones. And then she has another book coming out, I think this month, like being translated into English. And I read 3 of her books at the end of last year to try and see. And one I read was Greek Lessons, and I just didn't like the audiobook narrator. So I want to try it again when I can read it physically. And I really liked Human Acts. I thought that was a great book. Very, very good writing, emotionally compelling, really details like the just the horrific things that humanity can go through and still like come through it. It really reminds me of like Man's Search for Meaning, where it's like, Viktor Frankl was put into the war camps and he found a reason to live and all that stuff. Just a beautiful book. And then I read The Vegetarian immediately afterwards and hated it. I don't understand why that book is so popular. Like, I don't get it. It's just this woman who like, she decides she doesn't want to eat meat anymore, and so her husband's just an asshole to her, and that's like the whole book. Like, there's no like, I just spoiled 87% of that book, and I'm like, I don't get it. But it is interesting what wins for the Nobel Prize sometimes.
Yeah. This Polish author Olga Tokarczuk, she won a few years back, and if there was one book that I would recommend, despite not loving it, is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. If you guys like future nostalgia and Dua Lipa, Dua Lipa.
Oh yeah.
She loves her, and she just interviewed her, and it was really good. The interview.
I've definitely heard of this book. I've seen the name. I think I have one of this woman's books on my list. So I'm just checking my Goodreads right now. What is the other book that this woman's written?
So she also read Primeval.
The Books of Jacob is the one that I'm very interested in.
Yeah, I haven't read those yet.
Things about that. Yeah. To bring this down from our level of pretension to the complete opposite side here, we're talking about Nobel Prize winners. So we're going to go to the other side here and talk about schlock Stephen King. Stephen King is one of my favorite authors. No, he's one of my favorite authors. I have Stephen King tattoos. I was just making a joke that like, people think he's like, he has no literary merit. That's that.
Oh yeah. Trash.
You've read quite a few Stephen King books and had like a bit of a mixed experience, but overall positive. Are there some Stephen King books in your near future that you're hoping to read, or like, how's the journey going?
Yeah. So I think my aim for this year is 11/22/63.
Hell yeah. That's my favorite one. So.
Yeah, a lot of people love that one. Have you read Cujo the Dead Zone? And
I've read every Stephen King book. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was in the presence of like a mythological creature.
Yeah, I in 2023, I was like, I have like 20 of his books left. I should just finish them off. And that was actually a bad idea, because the problem was I only had Pet Sematary and a bunch of books I had not read because I'd heard they were bad left. So I was like, I'll save Pet Sematary for last and finish on like one that I know that I'm going to really like. And then what happened was all year I just read like pretty trash Stephen King books. And at one point I had to like stop and be like, do I even like this author anymore? And I reread The Stand, and I was like, oh no, this guy's a banger. And then I read Pet Sematary, and Pet Sematary was fantastic. But yeah, the last I read like Tommy Knockers and Rage, which are just terrible.
Stop with Rage. Rage is
literally an affront to literature. Like, it's really bad.
I think, okay, I'm gonna make a joke. I actually don't know if I can make this joke. I don't know like what goes, but actually, no, I won't make the joke.
Anything goes on my streams. I don't care. You can make whatever joke you want.
I was gonna make. Sorry, I've just been following around this attending doctor who makes he says the craziest things, and I feel like his sense of humor is rubbing off on me, and so it's really bad. But I was gonna say the fact that I can't say it.
Okay.
I was gonna argue which is the bigger crime, the fact that it like exists and stuff, or I can't make that joke. I'm so sorry.
Okay, you can just tell me. You can just tell me after.
I can tell you later.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And yes, Rogue, I am listening to 2 audiobooks during this stream. I don't even hear Vera. I'm just guessing what she's saying. But yeah, so Cujo, I just reread. I DNF'd it in high school, like 80% of the way through, like not intentionally. I just was like kind of bored, and I was like, it's fine. And then I went back and reread it because his new short story collection has a sequel in it. And I was like, well, I'd like to re-familiarize myself with Cujo. And I really liked it this time. Like, I still think like the 60 to 80% mark kind of loses some luster. Like, I see why I DNF'd it in high school, but I thought it was really good. Like, and the sequel novella, Rattlesnakes, was excellent. One of the best Stephen King novellas. So.
Maybe I'll go back to it then. I don't know. Like my takeaway was too much cheating and not enough rabbit dog. Like I wanted the rabbit dog.
There's a lot of cheating. I do think it's like a character study. Like it definitely Trojan horses you in with a rabid dog, and then it's like
Yeah.
this unhappy marriage. So like it's weird expectations. But did you finish the book or did you DNF it?
No, I DNF'd at like 60% because I was
Yeah.
like, I can't read this anymore. I want the dog. So, did you like
Yeah,
the
and
Dead Zone?
love the Dead Zone. Yeah.
Oh,
I think it's underrated. You didn't like the Dead Zone? Why
no.
not?
I liked the ice skating scene, or the one where they're like at the fair. Is it ice skating? I don't remember. I read it like ages ago, but I really liked that. And then it just kind of fell off, and it felt like we were doing like all these side quests, and I was like, I don't care. So,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, like I liked
but
that book definitely feels disjointed. I liked it because I think that the journey of Johnny Smith is like him trying to figure out what his life purpose is after his accident and coming back after his coma and being like, well, life has moved on. I'm like him being listless and just kind of being like, oh, I'm gonna go help these people solve this crime, and then oh yeah, these guys want me to be a psychic for their magazine, and oh yeah, there's this lightning storm, like all that stuff. It felt, and then it leads to what he decides his purpose is. Like I felt like he needed that, but I could totally see it just being like too many just random side plots for someone.
yeah, Kyle, a crime has been committed in the comments section. The Rogue says my favorite is the abridged version of The Stand.
Well, the Rogue. This is bad takes. So have you read both, or have you just read the unabridged?
I only read the unabridged, but like I don't like the idea of abridged books. I'm a purist.
Oh well, it's not literally abridged.
Oh yeah, but like the added stuff with the kid and stuff, right? And
Yeah.
Trash Can
So
Man.
yeah. Yeah. Like I've read both. I think the story is better in the longer version, but I also I understand why someone would find it meandering, and I also hate the kid. Like kid is one of the worst things I've ever been subjected to. So I understand the impulse to not read the kid, but yeah, I mean, I like most of the added stuff. Like the whole no great loss parts are fantastic. There's a lot of really good stuff with the convoy. Yeah, unabridged is great. Steve Canada has a question: Pet Cemetery or Misery? Which one first? Have you read both of these?
I have, and Tom, I love you. Obviously, but and I'm sorry. I always agree with you. So just mute the stream for 5 seconds. I'd say go with Misery because Pet Sematary is better. So like Misery is so good. Like I love Misery. It broke my brain. I I had to step away from the Tudor Ramble podcast for like a good 2 days because I was just like audiobooking Misery so hard, and I loved it. But then Pet Cemetery traumatized me in the best way. And so I like Pet Cemetery more. So I'd say go with Misery first because it will prime you.
Yeah. I don't know your taste, Steve, but I kind of agree with Vera just because Pet Cemetery is a difficult book to read. Like it's fantastic. It's very, very good. But the type of horror that it's going for is just like pretty hard to deal with for a lot of people. And as a first book, I would only recommend it if I knew the person's taste as like a first sample of King. I think Misery is a much better starting place.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say that I have unpopular opinions about The Stand because my two favorite characters are Harold and Trash Can Man.
Well, Trash Can Man is a favorite. Like most people
Oh,
like Trash
is
Can Man.
he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
I
that.
do think so. It's interesting. I read The Stand when I was like 16, and I've loved it and talked about it for like since then. So I've seen a lot of different iterations of people reading The Stand. And I've noticed lately people who are reading it tend to dislike dislike Trash Can Man more often. I don't know if just like the sensibilities have changed. I don't really know why that is. I've just noticed that when I was younger, everybody that I talked to loved Trash Can Man, and more recently, it's been more often that people don't like his parts. That's just anecdotal, but that's what I've noticed. But liking Harold is a huge hot take. That is insane.
I love him.
Oh my God.
Okay, listen. I don't think a character needs to be good to like the character. I
Oh, I
think
totally
that
agree. Yeah.
I just found him fascinating, and I was rooting for him for so long, and I just felt bad for him, man.
I felt bad for him, and like I think you know what? Actually, have you ever watched the Stand miniseries that just came out like a couple years ago?
I did the first part, but then stuff got away from me. I just want to say, Stu Redman, Richard Marsden as Stu Redman is, you know, and also I think that the actor that they chose for Harold was perfect.
That's what I was gonna say. So I actually don't like that miniseries, but I think it did a lot of the casting really well. The guy
Yeah.
who plays Harold is maybe the best part about that miniseries.
Mm.
I think every scene he's in, he's really good, and he really brings the scarier parts of the character to life, but also the like depth of just like pitiable, sad human. I thought he was really great.
Yeah, like when they're in Boulder, I think there's this scene again, not really spoiling anything major, but there's this scene where he finds like camaraderie amongst like the
I
people
love that part.
rebuilding the
Yeah.
town, I think, and the way that that actor embodied that, it moved me so much. I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. Have you read any of The Dark Tower?
So I read The Gunslinger, and I didn't hate it.
Oh, good. Not hating it is
Yeah.
about as much as I've read it twice. Or no, I've read it 3 times, and it's fine.
I think I like it more after reading The Eyes of the Dragon as well.
That's fair. I would like try the Drawing of the Three before you decide on the Dark Tower, because like the Drawing of the Three and Gunslinger are just vastly different in tone.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing like a video. So I do this thing on my channel where I do like I read blank, and I want to do the Dark Tower as one of those. I already said this to John from Talking Story, but I'm so burnt out on like fantasy at the moment because, sorry, I hated Farseer. Yeah, and then I'm sorry. I didn't give it 1 stars because I thought that it was written well.
Yeah, I
So I
watched your
gave
review.
it
We're
2
we're gonna
stars.
talk about it for sure. Yeah.
But I was just so exhausted by it. And then from Farseer, I went into the Abomination. That is the Southern Reach trilogy. I think Authority, the second book, is doesn't justify being a book.
Are you ready for this? Are
In
you ready for this, Farah? I'm gonna agree with you.
Thank God,
I
thank
DNF'd
God.
that trilogy hard after Authority. Like I was like,
You're
nope.
so
There's
right.
like, I mean, I know the third book is like 14 pages or whatever, but I'm just like, I just can't. And then I had a lot of
No.
friends who really liked it, so I was like, maybe I'll give it another try. And every time I think about it, I'm like, man, it's just so boring to me.
Because nothing happens, and it's it's awful. Like, and the third book is actually the longest one. It's like 400 pages, and
Oh,
that's
I
like
didn't know that.
400 pages too much. And I can't. It's such a waste of time. I thought that I would make a video on it, and that's why I was like, yeah, I'm gonna read it. It's gonna be great. Um, no, I hate it. It won biggest waste of time in my awards show from January.
Wow. I read Born by Jeff Vandermeer this year, or I listened to the audio, and I liked it a lot. And then I did the pseudo sequel, Dead Astronauts, and that is charitably a collection of phrases not loosely like just loosely connected together with no thought. But I honestly think he just would like write a random sentence and then go to bed, and then the next day wake up and write a totally unrelated sentence, and then he got like 75 sentences and he was like, here's a book. Like I don't, that's not a book. I don't understand. So Jeff Vandermeer is 1 for 5 with me, and I think that's maybe it. Like
Yeah, I Murakami has this way of writing that he uses sometimes. I think he used it for Sputnik Sweetheart, where he just kind of like lists as many things as he can. And then he's like, okay, and I'm going to write about that. And that technique has some sort of like writing style. But the thing is, sometimes it works and sometimes it's trash. Um, and I feel like Jeff Vandermeer has the same thing, but like with phrases, because sometimes again, I said Authority is one of like the worst things I've ever read. It does not justify being a book. Short story, perhaps. But there was like one quote in there that I was like, wow, this is so relevant. This is so good. I'll see if I can find the quote. But because I posted it on Instagram like a while ago because I was like, wow, Jeff Vandermeer is really cooking with this one.
One sentence out of 200 pages was great.
Yeah, and then I just man, I was just so disappointed. Oh, here it is. The idea that a dysfunctional thought could take root in a vacuum, the individual, anonymous, and wraith-like unknowable because, especially at first, he or she had no interaction with other people. Because more and more in the modern internet era, you came across isolated instances of a mind virus or worm, brains that self-washed, bathed in received ideologies that came down from on high. Ideologies that could remain dormant or hidden for years, silent as death until they struck. Almost
That is
anything could
good.
happen now and did.
Oh,
The government could not investigate every farmer's purchase of fertilizer and fireworks, could not self police every deviant brain within its own ranks. And I was like, okay, Jeff is kind of cooking with this one. I like this analogy. I see kind of like, I like it. Picasso. Doesn't justify the book being over 300 pages. Doesn't justify being a book.
yeah. Well, I'm glad we agree on that one. So what you were saying is you got burnt out with fantasy. You were
Oh
leading to a
yeah.
second part.
Sorry, I'm so scatterbrained. But yeah, so I'm really burnt out on fantasy at the moment because of those two trilogies, and so I kind of am on a fantasy detox at the moment. I think I'll be back to fantasy with either the Devils because I have an arc, or I also just got Talking Stories arc for
Me too.
Discovery,
Yeah.
and I'm really hyped for that. I think it sounds really cool. So I
It's also
might
not.
do a chapter here and there.
It's also not like super. I mean, I haven't started it yet, but it's not like super fantasy. Like it's not like epic fantasy. So I feel
Yeah,
like it might be a good bridge to kind of get yourself back into fantasy and stuff.
exactly. And the Devils is also like historical, like set in our real world. And so I'm thinking those two can kind of be my bridges back into it. So
Good. I'm interested in loosely buddy reading The Devils with you if you want, because I'm probably going to read it in like the next month or so.
yeah, I have no clue when I'm going to be reading it. If
Just
I do
before
end up
May.
starting it soon, I'll let you know. But
Sounds good.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
actually
so
surprised I've been
burnt
able
out.
to hold off for this long because I originally, when I got the arc, was going to read it like that day, and I was just like, well, it's like 7 months or 8 months, whatever, till it comes out, and then I just kept waiting, and then now I'm like, I still really want to read it, but I guess maybe because it's so far out from being released that it feels like it's not real yet. Did you
Yeah,
read
I get that.
the Half a War, Half a King trilogy that's right here?
I haven't, but I've heard mixed things, and I. But you know what, Joe Abercrombie is my whenever like I was so sad in November bringing this up again. I was so depressed, and before I reread The Catcher in the Rye,
It's not
before it
funny,
went,
but
before it got really bad, and yeah, I had to turn to The Catcher in the Rye. I turned to the Blade itself and just rereading or like, re-listening to Steve Pacey, and I listened to maybe the first half an hour, but I was immediately like, oh my God, Joe is so smart. This is the best thing ever. Say one thing about Logan Nine Fingers. You've got
yeah,
to be realistic
I
about
need to
these
do a
things.
reread so bad. Like that was like my 2022 read. Like my first book of 2022 was The Blade itself, and my last book was Wisdom of Crowds. So I associate the year with reading like all of Abercrombie, well, all of First Law, I should say.
That's
And I'm like,
beautiful.
I can't believe it's already been 2 years since I read that series. Like, it's just so good.
Yeah. I every day I wake up and I think of the wisdom of crowds.
Is that your
It's
favorite
always
one?
there. Yeah. It's
That's what
the
I thought.
only book in that series that I gave 5 stars.
Well, that's because you're
All
a
of them
rating
were so
snob.
good, but yeah, I am.
Yeah. My favorite is I want to say The Trouble with Peace, but I will say like I think the most consistently good trilogy that I've ever read is probably Age of Madness. Like I think I put Trouble with Peace slightly ahead, but all three of those books, like I don't really have a reason to like one of them over the other. They're just so good.
Yeah. I I loved it. And
Good.
when I think about it, I love it more.
This is a very good question. Is there a book that was written in Polish and so far has not been translated that you really enjoyed?
Kamienie na Szaniec. There's a movie adaptation that you can watch. It is like it's not the best, but it is really good, in my opinion. And it's called Stones for the Ramparts, and you can watch it with English subtitles. And it's basically the backstory to how it came about was during quick history lesson, unless Kyle, you're like, Vera, shut up. Okay.
No, I'm a history minor. I'm all for this.
Okay. So during 1944 and prior to that, basically Poland was like occupied by the Nazis and stuff. And in 1944, we had the Warsaw Uprising, and the Warsaw Uprising, the entire like city was decimated. Hitler very famously gave this order of Warsaw is to be like brought to the ground so that it can never be rebuilt. And I think the population of Warsaw went from something like 2 million people to under 1,000 in less than a month.
Jesus.
In less than a month. And so it's a very tragic moment in our history. And leading up to that, there were things like the AK, aka the Armia Krajowa, meaning the army of the land or of the country. And the army of the country was just like very young people, like in their 20s and stuff. But there was also the subsect of it called Szare Szeregi, which are like the gray units, or the gray a szereg is kind of, what is it called when people like line up like next to each other and then there's like another line of people walk, you know what I
Like
mean?
a phalanx, or no, that would be with maybe shields. I would probably think phalanx, but that's not exactly the right term, but I know what you're talking
Not
about.
too
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, but that's kind of what it means. And szeregi also can just mean like military units as well, I think. Again, 444 is going to correct me in the comments, but I'm just waiting for that comment. But so the Szare Szeregi were like the younger people, so like the teenagers and stuff like that. And there were subunits kind of in that. And this was all like the underground army, because obviously Poland couldn't really have an army and stuff, like, you know. And so there were these three boys, Alek, Zośka, and Rudy, and those were their like code names. And they, I'm getting there. And they were these boys that led those units, and they were friends in high school. And they were thrust into the war. And the book is written by this guy who survived the war, who went to school with them, who watched them rise through the ranks of the gray units. And he documents the story of his friends who had a more tragic ending than he did. And he writes the book as like a kind of remembrance of like the horrors of war. And it's so tragic, but it's so beautiful. And it's all real, like it all happened. And when you walk through Warsaw, there will be plaques around, especially around the city center, that say, on this street, on this day, I don't know, 32 people were lined up by the Nazis and shot. Or there's another one where you walk up to this building, and it's a very like unassuming building. It's next to this very famous statue of the people, because during the uprising, people would go into the sewers and try to like move from one segment of the city to another part of the city through the sewers. And there's this statue for that, and it's beautiful and it's very big, and everyone always looks at the statue. But if they turn around and they like walk like 10 meters further, they'll see that the building that they're standing in front of, or like kind of next to, if I'm not messing up the location at the moment, it was a hospital where, and then again, it's a plaque that says, in 19 whatever, this was a hospital. There were 300 women, sick children here, and the Nazis came in and shot all of them. And it's very sad. And I think Kamienie na Szaniec, or Stones for the Ramparts, is a book that I really hope gets translated, because having that firsthand experience and writing about like your friends or your peers, and remembering them in that way is really incredible. And yeah, I really love that one, and it made a huge impact on me and my entire class, because it was another one that we had to read for class. And my parents actually went to the same high school as those three boys did, except obviously years after. So I have that kind of personal connection.
That's such a harrowing thing to have to write about. Like I read The Rape of Nanking, which that book is the worst. Like, this is not like the event. The event is like the worst thing I've ever read about. The book is good. But like, even like Iris Chang, while writing that book, like it put her in a deep depression, like having to research all of those horrific acts. And so like, even just like thinking about like him having to do that, but it's also like people he knew and cared about, like, man, that does need to be translated, because that sounds like, good isn't the word, but like important for people to be able to read.
Yeah, and like I said, there is a movie. The movie, it focuses a bit more on one of the boys, especially Azoshka, but and so Alek and Rudy kind of fall by the wayside, especially Alek. But like, I think the actor who plays Rudy is incredible, like incredible. I love his performance so much, and so I think that if you have a chance to watch it, it's to get the stories at least a bit. It would be good.
Do you know if it's like available on anything? Like, is this to pirate the seas, find it somewhere?
I'd need to double check. Like, I should know this, but I'm sure it's available somewhere. And if not,
the seas, for sure, To switch topics, are you gonna give these guys a try?
I promised Derry that I would. I don't know when, but I promised Derry.
So the thing I will say, and first of all, I will say, sometimes like people, like you don't know someone very well, and then they'll like tell you something, or like talk to you in a way where you're like, oh, I guess like we're friends now. And that, for me, that moment with you was when I was just randomly like I think it was the third time we'd ever talked, and I was just like, oh, hey, you're reading Farseer. And then I just get like 9 voice memos about how much you hate Farseer. And I was just like, oh, we're friends. I didn't know.
Whoops.
Okay. So and that was great. And then I watched your video, which I actually, I know you were like, we're memeing it up a little bit, but I thought you were fair. Except for the furry stuff, that's you being crazy. But like, everything else.
Okay, reread it, and I swear.
I am rereading Assassin's Apprentice right now. I think this is just, you're reading into some things, but
no, I swear. If you reread the start of Assassin's Quest and you don't get major furry vibes.
I know what you mean, and I just disagree, but that's okay.
Weird. And even the stuff like towards like later on with Night Eyes and
yeah,
I don't want to spoil.
We're gonna stop right there. That is super weird. I will agree. I'm 100% on board with that. But what I will say is, it's funny in your review that you're like, oh yeah, the end of Assassin's Quest was the best part of the trilogy, and that's actually the part I don't like at all. Assassin's Quest is my least favorite in all of Realm of the Elderlings, because I don't like the ending.
Oh wow! I'd love to ask you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that privately, but it's just interesting how like we can just be totally reversed on that. But just to give you, so I have a feeling you will not like the Fitz books in general. But that being said, I've known quite a few people who were middling to just okay on Farseer and then did like Tawny Man. I'm not saying that will happen to you. I definitely think you're more likely to not like it than like it. But I did not like Fitz at all when I read Farseer. Like, not at all. Like, I thought he was annoying and whiny. I just didn't want to be following him. And then I did like him in Tawny Man when he's grown up a bit. So there's a little bit of hope there. But Live Ship, I'm hopeful you'll like, ? Because you like her writing. and it's in third person.
Well, I appreciate that the writing is good, but it's not my
Yeah, it's
style
not
of
the main,
writing.
exactly, and it might be still too slow for you. Like that's where I think
It's not
that's where
that,
I
it's
think
that it reads very fairy tale-esque, and I'm
I
not
don't
a
think
fan of
I
fairy
don't think live ship
tale-esque.
feels that way. Like I know what you mean
Okay.
with the Hob books. I don't feel, or the with the sorry, the Farseer books. I don't feel like live ship reads that way. Maybe somebody else
Okay.
does, but I think her writing feels different while also still feeling like noticeably hers. But like I think that's like Fitz's flourish because he's writing and he's just like always he's just like back in those days we and it just like it just
And I'm
so
like, okay, Fitz, shut up. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
But no, it is refreshing. Like I think our corner, well, that's not true. The world, but people when they talk about books, it's just fun to just they're like, I hate this series or I hate blah blah. But even when you didn't like the trilogy, you're like, I really liked Kettricken, who is the best, and Burrick,
Yeah,
and
Kettricken and
yeah,
Burridge, they
yeah, they're the
really
best.
pulled through. Shout out to them. They're the only, like, if not for them, they would have been 1 stars. And like my enjoyment of the books goes ranges from 1 star to 1.5 star. But like they are, I think, objectively well written for the most part. And so I had to raise them up to 2 stars. But yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work for you. I get it. And the fact that we can be friends anyway is a testament to the fact
Yeah.
that it's not that serious, guys. Everybody just take your fingers off the triggers when your friends don't like books that you like. It's all fine.
Daria
Um,
mentioned you earlier.
oh, did Dare just get here?
Yeah,
Steve is asking me about Wheel of Time. Is it because do you like Wheel of Time?
I do. Yeah, I
Okay.
think Steve
So
found me with my Wheel of Time video.
okay. So Steve, I do have some Wheel of Time. I have the Sanderson Wheel of Times right here on my Sanderson shelf, and I got rid of most of the rest of my Wheel of Time books because I skipped the middle of Wheel of Time. Did you know that? I love this. This is fantastic. I love how much I'm surprising you with random shit today. Like, yeah. So this was a
Kyle,
controversy. I
that's
skipped.
crazy.
I skipped 6 books of the Wheel of Time.
6?
6. Yeah. So,
What do you mean?
so you know how there's 14. There's 6 in the middle. I decided ain't got time for that.
Which ones? Which ones? Wait.
Okay,
Okay,
so
let's.
I'll tell you the story. So, I was reading Wheel of Time, and I liked them. Like it wasn't a hate thing. And then everyone was like, Shadow Rising is really great. Shadow Rising is just like incredible. And I read Shadow Rising, and I'm like, yeah, the things that irritate me about this series are just getting worse. And the Shadow Rising is a good book. Like I gave it 4 stars. And then I was like, maybe I'll read one more. And I actually didn't really like Fires of Heaven. And I'm like, you know what? Is that your favorite one?
It's my second favorite. Yeah, it's my second favorite one.
What's your favorite one?
The Gathering Storm.
Okay, that's my favorite one.
Ooh.
So I'll tell you the story then. So I was like, you know what? I'm not liking this series. I really didn't like the end of Fire. Actually, Fires of Heaven I didn't hate. I just kind of was bored. And then I didn't like the end at all because of stuff that I had been spoiled on by other people. I'll tell you that when we're not live. And I just thought it was cheap. So then I was like, you know what? I'm 5 books in. I'm not loving it. I'm just going to DNF. Like it's fine. There's a lot of other books. And then I was getting rid of my books, and I was like, I really Sanderson's my favorite author. I really want to read the Sanderson books. And I'm like, well, what if I just read the prologue? Because my plan was to see if the writing style changed. And I was like, at least I can look forward to like Sanderson finishing it in a way that doesn't irritate me. And I read the prologue of The Gathering Storm, and it was just incredibly good. So then I was like, oh, this is awesome. So then I read chapter 1 of The Gathering Storm, and it was incredibly good. And I just kept going. And then I had no problems. So I was like, oh, like this book, like obviously skipping 6 books sounds crazy, but like Wheel of Time, there's not a lot of plot progression for a lot of that stuff. So there was things that had happened, but it was like, they'd be like, oh yeah, this thing happened. And I'm like, great, fantastic. And then I would just move on. And The Gathering Storm is all killer, no filler. That is a fantastic book, 10 out of 10, totally love it. And then I just was like, well, I have momentum, so I'll finish the series. So I finished the series.
Kyle, let me stop you right there. I really care for my subscribers, especially for Steve Canada, my OG. Love you. You're gonna give him a heart attack.
I'm so sorry, Steve.
Do that to him.
I'm so sorry, Steve. But
You
I
can't do
do
that to
speak
him.
positively of those end books, and I am going to go back and read Knife of Dreams.
Steve, this man skipped Do Mice Wells. Do Mice Wells. Do you even know what that is, Kyle?
No.
Steve, back me up.
I'm sorry, guys. But hey, the way I think of it is that, you know, it was either that or I never finished the end. Like I never get the end. So I got 3 books that I really, really liked out of it that I would not have read otherwise. So
Okay.
listen, I see your horrified look, and I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to
That's
think about
crazy.
this question real quick. What would be more acceptable to you if I was like, yeah, I read 5 books of Wheel of Time, didn't really like it, DNF'd, or if I said I read 5 books of Wheel of Time, thought it was okay, and then read the last 3 and loved them, and now think that the ending is one of the best endings I've ever read?
I want to know how
I think I broke Farah, guys.
I don't think I can answer. I
What
don't
what
I
what is
don't
your
know what's
question?
happening. I want to know how like the ending. How did you what
Look,
about
I'm sure there's things I missed. Like I'm sure like I skipped, 5,000 pages. Like I'm sure there's like context that I didn't get. I do think, and I thought this before I read Wheel of Time, we
Do
over
Mice
exaggerate.
Wells?
Well, you tell me what book that's in and I'll go read that just for you.
It's the ending of book 6.
I've read book 6. Okay, I just didn't know. I
Lord
know
of
you're talking. That's
Chaos.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. No, I went back and reread Lord of Chaos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about, yeah, Steve is asking the best question. Shout out to Steve. I love Steve. Do you know who Bella is?
Nope. But that might just be because I didn't care.
Bella is the most important character of the Wheel of Time.
Is
I'm
Bella the
sorry,
horse?
screw Rand. Yes,
Okay. Yeah, it took
Bella
me a minute. Yeah.
survives
No.
everything.
Yeah, no, I'm totally team Bella now that I remember. I just forgot I thought we were talking about characters introduced in the middle books.
Okay, I think I'm sorry, Steve. Love you, Steve. I think that it's okay to skim the slog. I skimmed,
I think
I
it's okay
didn't
to
skim,
skip
but
it because I finished the series and didn't need anything in the slog. Now, what I was saying is that I think as a fantasy community, we over exaggerate how much context people need to get stuff. This comes up more often in like Sanderson because people are like, you can't read this book without because there's gonna be one off kilter reference here. You're gonna not get. And it's like people are pretty good at picking up on context and like not like being totally serious, not playing it up at all. I do think there's less that happens in those 6 books than people think. Like I know that there are things. I definitely miss stuff, but the big things that happen, they give you enough context for. Like you
but
start
it's
book
plot
12.
and character. Like it's not the plot; it's the
Okay,
character
so
stuff.
I agree with that. But I found that interesting. So, like for instance, let's see. Okay, it's not going to be a spoiler to say Rand is very different from book 5 to book 12. And that was interesting to me because now I'm like, okay, he's had this big change. What has changed in him to make him be this way? And you kind of get like answer. Like I don't know every single step. Like I obviously skip some context, but I think the book gives you enough context to tell you why he's feeling so different and how all this pressure has been affecting him. And that leads to that beautiful scene at the end of the book with Rand, which is my favorite scene of the whole second favorite
Yes,
scene of the whole
I love
series,
that.
where he's on a mountain. And we all love that scene. And I still got the emotional connection to that scene. And
Maybe
basically
you're
what I'm
just
saying is
built
it's
different.
much ado about nothing. Like, it's fine to
I love that play. I love that play. Oh my gosh. I love you with so much of my heart. There is none left to protest is one of the most beautiful lines ever. Shout out to Shakespeare. You were a real one.
I have not read or seen that play, unfortunately.
Oh.
But I do like Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, which are the only 2 that I've read. So
I recommend Othello. That's my favorite one.
yeah, I do want to like read them. I actually what I really want to do is see a Shakespeare play because I've never gotten to see one, and I think that would really add to the experience. Steve, you're killing me here. This is so funny. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
Steve's mom.
Steve rereads the series every single year with his 80-year-old mother. Every year. They reread it.
Wow, that's
Every
awesome.
year. You're I can't believe you're doing this.
I did it 2 years ago. This is before I knew you. Like, it was really funny. So I'll tell you the lore real quick, which is that I was reading it in secret because I told everybody I DNF'd the series, and I was just like reading The Gathering Storm. And I don't know if you know Jake Bishop, but he's a big Wheel of Time fan, and he's a close friend of mine. And I messaged him on Discord, in the public chat, and I was like, "Hey, I'm reading a book that you love, that you will never expect me to be reading, and I'm loving it." And everybody was doing all these like theories and guesses about what book I was reading, and then somebody was like, "Maybe he's reading Lord of Chaos," and Jake was like, "There's literally no chance it's Lord of Chaos." And then I dropped the bomb that it was The Gathering Storm, and everybody went wild. And I was like, "Yeah, it's a good time."
That's crazy. You know what you should have done? You should have taken a page out of my book. And so I gaslit people that I read Harry Potter by like going back to the library and like checking the books out like every week or so, because I was like, well, obviously I have to like read Harry Potter or be seen as have read Harry Potter if I want to be perceived as a reader. And I never did. And you should have just been like, yeah, guys, I'm reading Lord of Chaos next week. That was so good. I'm reading the next one. And
I actually considered doing something like that with Malazan, because I don't want to ever talk about Malazan. I like it a lot. I like Malazan a lot.
okay.
I don't like 52% of the people who talk about Malazan on the internet. Like, not like the people in discussions, but like the commenters. It just, I don't know. I've had a really bad experience with that fandom, and I just like, every time I read a Malazan book, I just get really annoyed by like a bunch of the talking that I do about it. So I'm like, what if I just pretended to finish the series? But like, I mean, not really. I'm gonna actually read it.
What's the backlash that you got, if it's okay for me to ask?
So in the vaguest way, I this is gonna sound like a non sequitur, but I grew up very poor. I grew up on a carnival, and whenever I would go to class, my I would always have like a teacher parent conference, and they would always say some sort of shit like, "Kyle's very smart considering his upbringing," and it always would drive me nuts. So I think I have developed some sort of like whenever people think that they're smarter than you for something, it doesn't just kind of bother me, it really bothers me. And I think the Malazan fandom is simultaneously two halves. It's either people who are really, really understanding and thoughtful and nuanced and talking about all the great things that Erickson's doing, and then it's people that are doing that but smugly, and the smug half makes me want to just set myself on fire. Like, I really hate it. Like when people are just
Please
like,
don't. But yeah.
people are like, yeah, like, actually, like, there's this, and if you don't do this, and like, there's a character in the second book. I know you haven't read Dead House Gates yet, so I won't tell you what it is, but we can talk about it after. Who I didn't like, and they're very famously controversial because the character is a woman, and a lot of the people who don't like that character don't like her because she is a woman that's dislikable. And this woman has a lot of trauma. And so I was like, yeah, I didn't really like this character. She's kind of an asshole. And instead of like engaging, that's like the brief version. And then instead of like
She sounds like
engage
Yennefer, so I'll probably love her.
engaging in what I was saying, people were arguing with the 10 years of arguing they had already done, of people just hating her because she's like a dislikable woman or whatever, or a woman with trauma. And so like, did you actually know that, trauma manifests this way? And people, I'm like, I actually know, like, I've studied psychology for like 6 years. Like, I understand why she is the way she is. I just personally thought she was irritating to read. And like, that's a totally valid way of reading a book. And that was when I really soured on the fandom, because it was like every second time I mentioned the book at all, that just was a talking point, and people would just like attack me without even listening to what I was saying. And so then I was just like, I don't really like talking about this series. And then I was buddy reading it with Bookborn, and we read Memories of Ice, and we never did a live show because we were both kind of feeling the same way about the fandom. And also, not to speak for Bookborn, but it took her a long time to read the third book. And then after that, she's like, I don't even want to know if I want to continue the series right now because they're so taxing for me. So then that kind of just went off the rails. But I do think it is a very good series, and I want to reread. I have Midnight Tide sitting right next to me to start when I'm in the mood. But
That's so interesting. And thank you for sharing that. I I was actually curious why Book 4 and didn't do a Midnight Tides review, because I was like
Well,
looking for
she
inspo.
hasn't read Midnight Tides. She read the first three with me, and
Oh,
then
is Midnight? Oh, Memories of
Memories of
Ice.
Ice. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we read the first three, and like she liked all three. But the fourth book is where people were concerned she might DNF. She has a pretty big aversion to child harm, and there's some stuff in there that
Oh,
people had
yeah.
warned her might be a problem. And so I was like, look, she was already on the fence about whether or not she was going to keep reading it just because of how long it took her. And I was like, I'll go ahead and read House of Chains, and I'll tell you what I think. And then, and I read House of Chains, and I was like, look, I think you're going to have some problems with this book. I don't think. And if I was like, if the rest of the book was like phenomenal, I would be like, maybe you'll like the rest of it and you can just skip some stuff. But I just really think there's a lot of stuff in here that you won't like. And she was like, okay, I'll put it on a pause for now. And then Midnight Tides is like a prequel. So the fifth book is basically a standalone. And so I was like, well, if I read the fifth book and I think it's fantastic, maybe I'll get you to read that book and see how you feel about that one. And then go back to book 4 because they're not, but we'll see. I haven't read book 5. Maybe that would be nonsense, but I feel like that makes sense. But, you know, maybe she'll just have her own journey from here on out.
Yeah, no, my experience with the fandom has been okay right now. I only have one book out, one
Yeah.
video out about the first book. I will definitely do a video for Dead House Gates and Memories of Ice. I'm giving myself 3 books to see if
And
I
I
want
think
to
that's totally
do it or
valid. Yeah.
not.
And you
Yeah.
felt like you had a pretty good reading experience with Gardens of the Moon.
I gave it 3 stars or 3.25. So yeah, pretty
Yeah,
good.
but on most people's rating, that's like a 4.75 or something, you know?
I like. I thought it was solid, but it's
Yeah.
not one that like I really think about every day. It's not one that I loved Crocus and I loved Darujistan as a city and as a setting. I thought the atmosphere was great, but it's not one that really captivated me. And so yeah, like I liked it more than I didn't, but
Lots of people feel that way about Gardens of the Moon. I would say the first really big, like the ending of Dead House Gates. Like I do think like unless you hate Dead House Gates, which I don't see you hating, you should definitely give it 3 books if you thought the first one was just like decent. But the ending of Dead House Gates really hits a lot of people. Like that's where a lot of people fall in love with the series. So that might be. But then I also know people who don't like Dead House Gates and love Memories of Ice. So it's really, I mean, it's such a diverse series. So it's really hard to know until you experience it.
yeah,
And you will not
I'm
deal with the
curious.
hate that I got for Dead House Gates because no matter how you feel about that character, you can't have misogyny for it. So like people
That's
won't
true.
they won't actually you. So
Oh,
you got
I'm
that
so
going.
sorry you had to go through that. I think it's so
It's fine.
stupid when people, they don't like when they don't engage with a criticism or a dislike that you have, they just kind of there's this idea of the thinking fast and slow, right? And I just had
Yep.
a talk
Daniel
about it.
Kahneman. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the consultants or attendings is what you guys call them in the US. I don't know. Are you in the US or Canada?
Canada. Yeah.
Canada. But in the US, they call them attendings. And they're like the big boss doctors, at the top of the ladder. And one of the attendings was giving this presentation, and he was talking about like decision making in like critical care situations and just in diagnosing. And he was telling us about thinking fast and slow, right? And so that it's very easy to go into the fast thinking kind of mode because you're just so used to, I don't know, for example, sorry, this is like medical talk, but I don't know, a young woman comes in and she has right-sided pain, like low in her stomach, and she says, oh yeah, before it was like somewhere around like the center of my stomach, or like I didn't really feel it very like localized to this one point, but like I had a stomach ache for a few hours, but like I really feel it in my right like hip at the moment, from the front. And your first reaction might be like, oh, appendicitis, but then you might think, But if you slow down and like you think through it one more time, you can be like, okay, but she's a young woman. What if it's an ectopic pregnancy? And you don't want to miss an ectopic pregnancy. It's when the like the zygote or like the fetus or whatever is, it's not like in the uterus, it's like either in the fallopian tube or like outside or whatever, and like that can be like a life-threatening condition. And so it's this idea of, don't jump to conclusions too fast, and sometimes it's good to like go back and like think through things again. Anyway, the way this ties to what you were saying about like the fandom and stuff, a lot of times I think people can be, especially if these are quite old books, like not old, but like
They've been
they weren't
around for
released
discussion.
yesterday. Yeah, and I think people can just see, oh, so and so doesn't like this one character. Well, 50 other people that didn't like this character are just like misogynists, and so I need to destroy them, and and they so they get so like defensive over it, and they like jump to that really quickly. And sometimes it's better to be like, okay, but what is this reviewer, you in this case, what are you actually saying?
Right.
And if they actually slow down, then they realize, oh, it's not just a misogynist.
Yeah,
It's actually,
and that happened a lot, because like once I would actually get into it, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, it just seems like you're kind of in the middle," because I don't think she's a poorly written character. And like like I think of Tori from Tori Talks. That's like her favorite character in fiction of all time. She did like a video talking about her. It's a very good video, and like I get the character is well written. I just like on a line by line basis, just like thought she was not someone I wanted to be reading about, which I just think like is not that hot of a take. Like it's just like, oh yeah, like it's just kind of an irritating human being. But that, going back to Thinking Fast and Slow, I finally read that this year, after almost reading it for like 10 years, because Daniel Kahneman is just an extremely fascinating guy, and then he died last year, very sad. And so I finally read it, and I highly recommend it if you have not read it. I think knowing the differences between systems 1 and 2, and how you can kind of like kick yourself out of it, and how so much of our erroneous judgment is on like that quick decision making that we've just learned to trust in a gut level that actually has no bearing on any sort of like facts we've taken in, and like taking a step back and being like, okay, well, how can I actually reassess the situation, is like so meaningful and important, especially in the medical field. It's like, I'm glad you had a talk on that, because it's something that I think happens a lot.
Yeah, I'm just really lucky right now with the hospital that I'm in. I'm finishing there this week actually, but they have this like mandatory developmental meetings for the junior doctors in the evening, or like lunchtime, and they get like free food. And the medical students, we are highly advised to go those as well. And so we go, and sometimes, and no, like yeah, every single time that I've been to one, like I learned a lot. And whether it's just like a different way of looking at things, or understanding the different types of scans better, or just the idea of the thinking fast and the thinking slow. I think it's really good. And so I'm really happy that we have that, and that I was stationed in this hospital that I'm in right now, because
that's awesome. Do you mind if I ask what like you're going to med school for? Like, do you have a chosen path so far, or?
So the way it works, is that you first have to become a doctor, so just doctor, and then you do like it's called different things in different countries. In the UK, it's foundation years 1 and 2. In Ireland, it's intern year. I'm not sure what it's called in the US, but you just kind of do these like rotations and stuff. And then but that's after you've already graduated from your medical degree, and that's kind of when you decide to specialize. Does that make sense? And so choosing what sort of doctor you actually want is a choice that you make after you become a doctor, just general doctor of nothing. But
Doctor of Nothing. What a good title of a book that would be. I hope you one day release a memoir and call it Doctor of Nothing. That would be great.
That you're releasing a memoir.
Oh no. No, that's awesome that you're having such a good time in your school. We are running out of time. I had so many questions to ask you, and we just get off topic, which is
I'm
great. That's
sorry.
what I love. No, that's good. I prefer that. I have the questions here in case I don't know what I'm talking about and I need to get inspiration and stuff. So it's always better when it's just a natural flowing conversation. But
Can I
to
just
end
say one
off,
thing?
yeah,
I'm
of
so
course.
sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, Kyle. Iskandaria's in the chat. Shout out to him, and he's pulling a very deep booktube lore thing. He's asking me a pop quiz. Who wrote the new amazing book called Discovery? J.A.J. Minton. Get wrecked. I got one right. You're still at 0. Get wrecked. Sorry. Yeah.
That's all
Love
good.
to Alex. Love to Alex.
I was just going to ask, how has the last year of BookTube changed your outlook on reading or just your taste in general? Because like you just had your 1 year BookTube
Oh yeah.
anniversary.
I know this is really bad, but it hasn't really. I'm
That's an
not.
acceptable answer. You don't have to change just because of all these goons on the internet talking to
Yeah, to be fair though, just want to say I do ask Alex harder questions. So, but no, it hasn't really changed me because I think. Okay, everyone thinks this, that they're not like a very easily influenceable person. But like I haven't read any. If I don't want to read a book, I don't want to read it. And if anything, BookTube has made me search for um, opportunities to engage in a conversation. So, like Dune, I've wanted to read Dune for years now. Um, and the fact that it was coming out in March, and I was like, a video would probably do well about Dune in March. It was an excuse for me to finally
Right.
pick up a book that was on my TBR for so long. But like my reading tastes haven't changed. My stats haven't really changed. And
That's
now I
good.
just have more people that like I can talk with, which is perfect.
Yeah, that's the part that works for me the best. Like I
How
find
has
that
it changed you?
the thing is that I also like I'm sure that it has like now it's been a couple of years. So I've actually I've only been reading fantasy for 4 years. Beyond like so that's not true. Like I read Harry Potter and loved it, and I read A Song of Ice and Fire and loved it. But I was just like
Mm.
I just like those. I don't like fantasy. And then during the pandemic, I read Stormlight Archive, and I was like, oh my god, I can't deny that I like fantasy when there's just people fighting in the sky. So then I started reading a ton of fantasy. And then I found this community, and it's been like 3 years, I would say, that I've been like pretty active in the community. And I think that I'm a more thoughtful reviewer. Like I noticed that I give a lot less 1 stars than I did previous to being in the community because I try to see what other people like in something, and I'm also just more aware of the reasons other people would like something. Like before, it's not like I would be like, "Oh, I don't like this 1 star," but I would be less aware of the reasons why somebody else might like a book. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, I didn't really like, whatever book, The Magicians, which is a terrible book. But I've heard people explain what they like about it. I'm like, oh, okay, they hit their head. That's so interesting. I guess for people who hit their head. I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean. Like it allows me the more of the world experience of other readers to process my reading in a way that pulls me out of just myself, which I think I found very valuable.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think there's a lot of uh yeah, Kyle, you're in every Discord. I see you all the time. You're so active.
I've never seen you post, and you just said lurker. You must be.
I So I have times that I'm more active and less active. It's just that I'm so exhausted currently. Like this month,
No doubt,
just because I'm on my hospital placement.
of
Next
course.
next month, I'll probably be a bit more active because I'm gonna be just doing research and like OSCE. It's OSCEs are like clinical exams. And so I'll be practicing for those and doing research for a month. And so like I won't be too busy. But then March is going to be awful. And then April exam. Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's nice talking to you about your schedule because I felt so busy this month because I only had 3 days off, but my work is so easy. So it's just like,
That's awful.
ah,
Am I stealing one of your like free days?
I mean, yeah, but that's fine. Like,
I'm awful.
but what you have to understand is I have a lot of free time. Like my shifts are 5 hours. Like I've read 28 books this month, and it's the 28th day of the month. That's what fast audiobooks do to you, Vera. You can just I'm listening. I finished 2 during this live stream.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
do you not know how much I read? It's a lot. It's not cool. It's lame. It's I need a hobby.
Are
Or
you one of
something.
those that reads like 200 books a year?
I read 315
300?
last year.
315?
Yeah. I actually here's a funny thing. So I get a lot of I actually don't usually talk about it, and then this year I did. So then I was like, well, I'll just say the number. But because people really overemphasize the number, and like if I do a wrap up in Discord, it's always like 25 books, and then people don't talk about the books that I'm talking about. They will just talk about how it's a lot of books. I'm like, guys, I get it, but like it's been 3 years. Like I always am like this. Like, could you just, if you don't want to talk about any of the books or read them all, just don't. And then what I get a lot of people that are like, oh, you read too many books, so like you must not be like actually processing
Well, I
them or
hate
whatever.
that.
Like, and
I
so
hate
this
I think that's
this
so
month,
unfair.
I think I'm gonna hit 31 in 31 days. And I think I'm going to do a live stream on Friday and just talk through every book. And just like as a proof, like I'm like, see you guys, I do process all this stuff, because it's really annoying that it's like, yeah, I listen fast, but I also like read books a lot, and I like talking about them. So it's like, why would I I think because we are in part of the internet that has like been oversaturated with people that try to do the numbers game, that it becomes an assumption that I'm also just trying to do the numbers game.
Yeah.
But I've gotten myself into some sort of craziness where if I don't listen to an audiobook at 3 times the speed, it sounds too slow. So it's like, what am I going to do? Make myself suffer through this book? No, I'm going to listen to it at the speed that I like it. And then so it takes me 3 hours to read it. So
I think that's fair. And you know what? I get it. And especially, do you immersion read?
yes,
Ever?
like
Yeah.
more now than I used to. But it just kind of depends on how I'm feeling.
I
This is
think
true. I'm
immersion
hanging out with
reading is
friends.
I think immersion reading is so good and also so fast. So,
Mhm.
and I really don't like this idea of like, oh, you read a lot and you must not be processing. I really think that's so derivative, and I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of people putting their experiences onto other people, because like they'll read,
Yeah.
4 or 5 books a month, which is like a fun, like that's totally, for people that aren't crazy, that's a totally acceptable amount of books. But because that's the amount that they read and they find that challenging, then they're like, if you're reading double or triple that, it must be because you're not actually paying attention. I'm like, that's just not true. So, but
Yeah.
I'm
I
also not
support
in
you,
med school.
Kyle.
So, I mean, that's very different. Aslan was asking what I do. I work as a server and a bartender. So in the mornings, I work at a cafe as a server, and in the evenings, I work either as a server or a bartender at a pub. So I do like a fair amount of doubles and stuff. So
Do you do espresso martinis?
unfortunately,
If I ever visit you, will you make
I will
me
make
one?
you an espresso martini.
They're my favorite drink
That's
ever.
interesting. I feel like espresso martinis lean older. Like I feel like most people who ask me for an espresso martini are like 40. So you have refined taste.
Okay, whenever I go to a new bar or a new restaurant or whatever, the first thing I order is an espresso martini, because I'm so sorry, my roommates are outside in the hallway. I don't know if you can hear, but I always order an espresso martini, and then I I really judge it because there's so much to judge. The foam. Did they put beans? If they add cinnamon or like chocolate, because some people do that, some people do that. Next, is the liquid actually a dark black, or is it see-through brown? And you can kind of like prepare yourself, and then you can also judge them on if they do, Kahlua, or if they don't. I love Kahlua. If they use vanilla vodka, what type of vodka they use. If they if they have a pre-made like coffee, or if they make the espresso in the machine.
If you have
And
a pre-made coffee for an espresso martini, you should just quit your
crime,
job in the moment. Like there's a
agree.
lot of different ways you can make them, but using regular coffee is just criminal. Like that's not what it is. So
Yeah, so I'm very into, you know, and then
So
there are
you're an
variations on the
espresso
espresso
martini
martini.
snob. That's interesting. I would not have expected that.
Oh, it's my favorite thing. My like private for like my friends on Snapchat, like my in real life, not that you're not in real life, but like in my like med school
Right.
Vera life, on my Snapchat I have a private story, and I just document my ratings of espresso martinis.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I
Just
I
wandering
love
around all of Ireland, just being like, "Here's the best espresso martinis."
I tested almost every single bar in the city that I'm in, based on their espresso martinis. And my favorite barman was this man called Alan. And he was the only one that really made an espresso martini that it
See,
really roused
you're
like
gonna
all the
you're gonna judge
senses.
my espresso martini like it's.
And
I
then
had a.
Alan quit.
Oh no.
I have him on Instagram though, and he said that if I ever need an espresso martini or whatever, then I should just call him up and stuff. So
So the
yeah,
two
but
things we've learned about Vera today is that she's very interested in the history of Poland, and she stalks bartenders that make really good espresso martinis. The yin and yang of every human being, ladies and gentlemen. And Derry, I also like a whiskey sour. There's nothing wrong with a whiskey sour. It's great. Snapchat is still a thing. I use it every day, unfortunately, because of all my young coworkers that don't know how to text.
because Snapchat is perfect for texting, or you can take like ugly
I
photos
understand
of
all the
yourself.
I understand all the arguments. I use it every day. I'm just saying I had deleted it for a while, but then the problem is I work with a bunch of like 18 to 25-year-olds, and every single one of them uses Snapchat, including my manager, which is pretty funny to me
That's so
because he will
for
only
work.
like he'll message me on Snapchat to be like, "Hey, do you want to come in half an hour early?" And I'm like, "I guess." So I just started using Snapchat more often again, but for a while there, I was free of it.
That's crazy. Like for us, we like socially, we're Snapchatters, like at least in my area. Um, or alternatively, but like for like business stuff, business, I don't know, like college stuff, we use WhatsApp. And
Oh yeah.
even the attendings, it's so funny. They have like I was looking at like my attending, and you know, and they have like a attendings group chat for the hospitals as well.
Yeah,
So
WhatsApp is not big here for some reason. Like I don't know why it's big all over Europe and like most of the world, but I don't know anybody who
interesting.
uses WhatsApp. And yeah, like bars just are uncivilized. Like if I worked anywhere that wasn't a bar, my manager would not message me on Snapchat, but it's just how it works, I
You just
guess. I
get a
don't know.
selfie of your manager being like, and then it's like, did you? Where are you? Or whatever.
That has
And then you're like
almost that has almost
at home.
literally happened. Like almost exactly has happened.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. Like even so I had a coworker I was trying this is not about books anymore, guys. We're just hanging out. But like I had a coworker who I needed her to take my shift and she like famously doesn't answer her snaps very often. Like we joke about it. And I was like,
I
"Hey, like
hate
can you take this
that.
shift?" And then she didn't open it. And then like a day later I was like, "Hey, I need you to take this shift." And then she didn't open it. I was like, "Whatever." And then like 3 days later, like after the shift, she's like, "Oh my God, I should just give you my phone number." And I'm like, "Yeah, you definitely should. Like that would make everything easier." Like so
No, if I get a message through iMessage, I'm stressing
really,
because
that's interesting.
yeah, yeah, if I get it through iMessage, then I know I screwed up. Or it's my like cell phone provider, or it's a weather warning, or
Yeah, what
it's bad.
it is different because like I use so many different apps to message people that like there's just different like I know if I get a Facebook message, it's like someone that I never talk to that is messaging me for something ridiculous. And then like Snapchat is usually a coworker. And then
Usually,
Discord is obviously like my online friends. And then Instagram is either like book people or like some of my friends. And then like texting is like my close friends and family. And it's just weird how like it's always like nobody ever messages outside the app that they always message on.
yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, because I'd say Snapchat is my main messaging app for like my friends. Then for family, uh, WhatsApp because we have like a family group chat. Med school stuff also WhatsApp. Um, we don't use Facebook. Instagram is only for like sending each other reels.
Oh yeah, like that's half my Instagram. Actually, it's
Yeah.
funny. There are times where like my actual like text messages on my phone are just like my wife, my mom, and my best friend for like the last like 2 weeks. Like that's like nobody else has texted me.
Yeah.
Everybody else has Snapchatted or Instagrammed me. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. We've just changed. But I've
It's
noticed that like a lot of the people that I work with now, they ghost people on Snap by doing the side swipe.
I do
And
that all the time.
I know you do because you're 21 and it's a 21-year-old thing to do. I find it very disingenuous. Like I'm like, you're just gonna leave this person on red, but not really.
Well, no, 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 no. Listen, listen, listen. Because you need to like see what the message is, and then you need to like prepare
Formulate
yourself
your
and
thought.
be
Yeah,
like,
I've heard the argument. I know. Yeah.
yeah,
But a lot of
yeah.
them
And
don't use it
so
like
I
that.
do.
They'll just come up and they'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I knew she was saying this, so I just didn't answer." And I was like,
Oh
"How
no,
crazy."
no, I don't do that. But sometimes I do need to formulate my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's the same thing as if you get a text, you just put it down for a little bit.
No,
So
because it
Evie,
says you're delivered.
yeah. So side swiping on Snapchat, they've introduced a thing probably a couple of years ago now where like you can side swipe the text open a little bit so you can see what the person said, but if you don't fully open it, it doesn't read to the other person as being opened. So you can see what they've said and then put it back, and then to the other person it looks like you haven't opened it. So I can be like, "Hey Vera, it's like, we're about to go live," and she can just like almost open it and be like, "I ain't going live." And then so you can just like not open it. It's very sus.
It's 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 the best human invention. And but something that does annoy me so much is you can have your snap maps on, which I have mine off, except for my
Me too.
boyfriend.
Yeah.
But a bunch of people like in my course and stuff have it on. And if I see and it's someone that like I need to get a response from because either I'm supposed to be doing a mini clinical exam on them, a mini CAX, or if I'm supposed to like meet with them somewhere to do something important, and I see that it says, "Oh, Brian," or whoever. Oh, sorry, Brian, if you're watching, just the name that flew into my head. Brian was active 5 minutes ago, and I texted Brian 7 minutes ago. I'm like,
Oh, how dare he? Yeah,
get
like
here.
literally last week, I thought this was so. This was something that would never occur to me. Um, I have a coworker who I guess she was going to go to her friend's birthday party, and then she was feeling like kind of tired and exhausted and anxious. So she's like, "I don't really want to go out." And I'm like, "Okay, that's reasonable." But she's like, "But my friend will be upset if I don't go." So I had lied to her and I told her that I worked. And so what she did is she came in to work and hung out and had a burger for like 2 hours because she was like, if she checks my snap map, then she'll see that I'm at work and I won't be lying. And I'm like, this is a lot of steps of things that I would never think to
Or,
do. Like,
or you know what she could have done? She could have drove over to work, um, opened Snapchat, and then not opened it for the rest of the night. Because
yeah.
then your location
Then
is
it shows
frozen
that
at
you're
the
yeah.
last place that you were
It's just
at.
so duplicitous. Like just say you're tired. Just be like, I'm really sorry. You are my close friend, but I feel anxious and I don't want to go. Like I've told people that. This is like there's communication breakdown these days, you know? Nobody will talk
Maybe
to each other.
miscommunication isn't such a bad trope, guys.
Yeah, we're bringing it back. We're arguing for the miscommunication trope as being realistic.
Yeah.
My final question to end us off here, and I just want to say it has been great talking to you. This flew by. We went longer than I was expecting because we're just talking about random crap. What is that?
So, sorry, my Italian roommate. If you hear anything, it's because my Italian roommate's in the hall. But this is a sad mouse from Instagram. I thought you'd reckon. Wait. Do you hear the song?
Yeah, I know the song.
I'd just like to say any criticisms towards my generation, or specifically me, this is who you're criticizing.
Well,
With that song playing.
I hang out with a lot of your generation, and I'm used to you guys and your absurdities. Like, you know,
I have it over here ready to just pull it up.
the last thing I want to know before we go is what are some things that you're excited about reading upcoming? Like what in the like not next month, maybe in the next 3 or 4 months. Like what are some things you're really excited to get to?
Okay, so Joanna's probably gone, but shout out to Joanna because she's my booktube icon. I want to be her when I grow up. Anyway, She is so cool. And I, ever since she reviewed The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison and Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, I've been I've been hearing their voices calling me, and I'm like, it has to happen. It has to happen. So I think I'll do, I don't know which one I want to do first, but I definitely want to do one of them. And then, but also, Cormac McCarthy has been calling me from beyond the grave as well. And so I really want to finish the Border trilogy and read The Passenger and Stella Maris. So those are kind of like the three authors that are, I hear their voices. I hear their voices. And I don't know which way I'm going to be pulled yet, but I know I will be pulled.
Have you read the rest of McCarthy besides those, like the rest of like the ones you mentioned?
I only read the first. I only read the four that I mentioned in the video that I
Yeah,
did.
gotcha. Okay.
And I also read his essay, The Kekule Problem.
Okay. Yeah, I want to finish McCarthy, but the recent news about him, followed up by the game and stuff, makes me just like, I don't know. I think I need time. I mean, the game and stuff is much worse, but like it just, need a little
The
bit of
game for
distance.
what? Sorry, I blanked out for a
Oh,
second.
the Neil Gaiman stuff came right after
Oh,
the
yeah.
Cormac McCarthy article, and so
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like generally grossed out. So I need some distance.
Yeah. And I get it. And I kind of want to save my thoughts. I actually don't know how I'm going to address it because, like, I know, oh no, oh my gosh, Bookborn is here. You're so cool. We mentioned you before.
It was fun for a really long. We spent like 20 minutes talking about Snapchat, and we just now.
And espresso martinis.
Yeah, there's a lot of espresso martini lore, Bookborn. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, yeah. But okay, so I don't know I don't know how I'm gonna handle it yet because I don't want to like Streisand it. I
Right.
think I might just put up like a little piece of text before the video, but I think that like the difference between the Gaiman thing and the McCarthy thing is, for me at least, is that like McCarthy's dead.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is a very
So
different situation. I think it was more like the 1-2 punch of them that has me a little.
yeah, and so like it's not great, obviously, and like I'm not gonna excuse him faking like a girl who's like underage document so he can like travel with her to Mexico. Like that's crazy. While he was like 40 something. Like that's obviously bad. But I think the difference is that yeah, like he's dead, and like it doesn't change the fact that like his books have been like so impactful to me, and I want to read more of them, and he's not directly benefiting from it because he's dead. And so
Yeah, for sure.
I don't feel as bad.
I don't want you to feel like I needed you to defend the fact you were going to read him next. It just like when you said Cormac McCarthy, I was like, I want to read more
Yeah.
McCarthy, and then that was my next thought. I wasn't like,
Yeah.
defend your traitorous accusations. Or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
And I don't know. I know it's good that you're asking me because like I should be thinking about how I'm gonna handle it a bit more, just because like when I do my live streams, even like people throw in the question of like what I think, and I'm like, well, I see the question. I'm gonna ignore the question for now because I want to handle it well, but I also don't want to make the entire video about that. And so I don't know. Like I'm low-key thinking of putting up like a black screen, giving my thoughts, and then linking Bookborn's video about Neil Gaiman and oh god, Jared Henderson's video on his take of the thing, because my take about the McCarthy situation is kind of between like somewhere those two videos kind of mixed together is kind of where I'm at, and I don't want to make a video just about that. So yeah,
That's fair. I don't think that I would want to wade into that abyss either. And it's just like an exhausting topic. And I don't want to end on that. So let's end on something fun. What is your least favorite book of all time?
What's your least favorite book of all time?
I already told you.
Oh yeah, The Catcher in the Rye. Sorry.
I can come up with a different one though, because my other one is Ready Player 2, which is actually Ready Player 2 is, I think, how people were like, yeah, like taste is subjective, and like, I know I didn't like this book, but I could see, like, Ready Player 2 is the only book in existence that if people told me it was their favorite book, I would judge them. I'd be like, I'm so sorry. Like, some things need to be judged, and liking Ready Player 2 that much is I'm judging you. So that's I think that book is just absolutely terrible. I actually think that's worse than Catcher in the Rye. So there's my answer.
Okay.
I love the slander. Well, it's only because it's one of her favorite books of all time, and she did an entire 20-minute essay. I don't know. I don't think we've ever talked about it. I think she does like it, but Ready Player 2 is a much better answer.
Okay.
Bookborn, tell us your Catcher in the Rye thoughts.
Yeah, Bookborn, please tell us your take. But yeah, I hope that I gave you a little bit to chew on when it comes to the Catcher in the Rye with my very extensive
You genuinely did.
monologue.
I really mean that.
So, yay, Bookborn likes it. That really validates me. I feel validated.
There you go. So is Authority your least favorite book of all time?
Man, I really don't know. Like, I really hate Robert Louis Stevenson. Like, for the longest time, Kidnapped, his book, was so trash. I hated it. But, like, I can't tell you why I hated it. I just hated it. Authority. Oh, I'm so stupid. The worst book of all time is probably somewhere between Allegiant.
Oh, that book's terrible. Genuinely horrifically bad.
I don't like any of Divergent, but I think Allegiant is like an offense to my eyes. Like, how I told you that maybe like the fact that I read The Witcher for the first time in like 7th grade, something like that, but it's hard for me because to read Polish and like to focus on it, or at least that it was, because my eyes were like I didn't have them checked. I read Allegiant like the year before, so perhaps actually Allegiant is the reason why my eyesight got destroyed.
That is amazing. That book is terrible. I remember I was reading it on a trip I took. I went to 30 concerts across the Midwest in like 35 days or something like that.
Oh my God, Rise and Fall of a Midwest Prince. Hello.
and I brought only 5 books with me because I didn't read a lot at the time, and I was going to be like traveling and doing stuff. And 3 of the books was the Divergent trilogy. And I very clearly remember sitting in a field in Wisconsin against my car, reading Allegiant, and just being furious. So, that memory will stick with me forever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for me, it's between Allegiant and Ruin and Rising, which is the last book of the Shadow and Bone
trilogy. Yeah.
I just in general don't really like that trilogy. I like Six of Crows, the duology, but not Shadow and Bone. And I think Ruin and Rising is actually a crime to everything that is set up in the previous 2 books. Like, I think the first book is disappointing. I think the second book is carried single-handedly by Prince Nikolai. Kind of like Farseer is carried by Kettricken. I'm so sorry, Derry. I'm sorry, Derry.
Derry loves Kettricken. I don't think she's that upset about that.
No, but the fact that I'm saying that
yeah.
And then the Ruin and Rising is just
okay.
It throws everything out the window.
Well, I'm glad we both can agree on our hatred for Allegiant. And,
I also hate the Dead Zone and Cujo. I'm sorry.
Really, at the total bottom? Wow, that's
like the Dead Zone. Yeah,
that's a rough one to swallow. But you know what? I did put one of your favorite books of all time at my bottom. So I guess it's karma. You didn't put Storm of Swords on the bottom, which, by the way, guys, I want everyone to know, I went 2 hours and 10 minutes talking to a human being that reads fantasy and hasn't read A Song of Ice and Fire, and I didn't mention it until right now. That's extraordinary, I have to say. One day we'll talk about this.
I don't know if Bookboard is still in chat, but I'm making this video where I basically I watched like a million booktube top 10 videos of 2024, and George R.R. Martin single-handedly made it his way into the top 10 because Bookborn was like, yeah, this book, and I was like, okay, ding ding ding, and then I looked at it at the end and I was like, oh, I can't let, like, Bookborn is great. I can't let George R.R. Martin crack the top 10 for this year because he was mentioned like 500 times by Bookborn. I'm so sorry. He'll be an honorable mention.
I think that's fair. I think Bookborn
Yeah.
tilted the scales there. And yeah, do you think you okay, so here's a question. You try to time videos to like popular culture stuff, and I know like we've previously talked that you
Yeah.
don't want to read A Song of Ice and Fire until there's another book. But do you think you might read Dunk and Egg for the TV show coming out? Because that's like a prequel
No.
standalone. You don't have to have read anything.
There's also, so my best friend Maya, I love her. She appeared on a stream with me once, and she's also my moderator. And if she watches this, I'm so sorry, Maya. But sometimes Maya is very forceful with what she pushes me to do. Maya, I have not listened to the Storm Saga of Epic yet. I am very sorry. And I have not watched Hwop yet. I am very sorry. And I also haven't read A Song of Ice and Fire yet. I am very sorry, Maya. And so, you know, Maya sometimes pushes me a bit too hard, where I'm like, where I to the point that I become resistant.
I think you need better friends because I got Bookborn to read it, and Bookborn when we first became friends, she was like, "I'm never reading this series." I'm like, "Okay, but what if?" And you know, I got her there, so you know, maybe we just need to. I just got to work on you a little bit, but you know,
Yeah.
I think you'd really like it if you liked Abercrombie. But there's lots to read. I'm just kind of joking around.
Okay, one last question for you. What's your favorite Taylor Swift song? Because the one time Bookborn replied to a comment of mine was on one of her shorts, and I said something about like, I think Brandon Sanderson is the Taylor Swift of fantasy, and I love Taylor Swift. And Bookborn responded being like, I don't remember what she said, but she made it seem like she's a Taylor Swift fan too, and I think that
She
yeah.
definitely is. I'll speak for
So
her right now. She's frequently told me she's like, I wish that the two things I loved the most weren't so popular. And I'm like, yeah, well, my favorite Taylor Swift song, if I went for just sheer how many times I've ever listened to it, like on my own, is "Shake It Off," because when that song came out, I was like obsessed with it. I'm like, maybe I do like Taylor Swift, but my actual favorite one is "Cruel Summer." I really like "Cruel Summer."
that's a solid answer. I think that like as Swifties, the best thing that we did in the world was making "Cruel Summer" the single it deserved to be and never was. So
Well, actually, Bookborn was the one who told me about it, and then I listened to it. I'm like, this song might be a banger, and then like it became like a really big single like right after, because I guess it wasn't a single before.
it
So
was never a single, no. But yeah, he looks
yeah,
up grinning like a devil, and what can I say? I do too. So yeah.
yeah. And then I gave her 10 Shinedown songs to listen to, and she only mentioned it like one other time again. So
Oh my god, I need to know Bookborn's top 10 Taylor Swift songs. Also, Kyle,
I
which
don't think this
era
was
are
her top
you?
10. She just gave me 10 to listen
Oh,
to that was like a sampling. Um, I don't know what era I am. I'm the
okay.
era of when she like did the pop music first. Like the Shake It Off out in 1989, like that was the album
1989.
I liked the best. But I also like I don't listen to Taylor Swift on my own very often, like my wife likes her more, but I will say that I've listened to most Taylor Swift albums and I don't dislike any of them. So like they're all good.
Bookborn says that you're Evermore as a person, and from what I know of you, I can see that.
I really need more
Evermore is so
context.
underrated. Can we talk
I like
about that?
Ever-
Like, I know
I
people
like
say
Evermore
that
a
a
lot.
lot of the time, but yeah, Evermore is so great. This pain, yeah, I love it, and even the song as
Ev-
well. The song
okay,
Evermore is
so
great as
she
well.
released two albums at the same time. Evermore is the one where she has the hat
No, not
and
at
it's
the
the back.
same time. A few months later, they were both
It was
released in
COVID. Time
2020.
time didn't make any sense, okay? It was all the same time. That's what I meant. I knew they weren't literally like at the same time. But it's the one she's wearing a hat, right? On the
No,
cover?
that's the one with the hat that is
I'm
red,
gonna
the
look this up.
2012 cover.
No, no, not that one. I know red because red was everywhere when I worked at Target.
Red.
Um,
Evermore is the
yeah.
one where she has a
Oh,
braid.
oh, she has a
Yeah.
braid. Sorry, I was imagining a hat. This is the album I was talking about. Yeah, I really like this album. It's good. I
Yeah.
listen to it a lot. Look at Bookboard, just knowing exactly. Of course, why would I be surprised?
I feel like if Bookborn and I ever do a stream together, we should do like in defense of Taylor Swift. I'd love to do that.
Well,
Because one of my goals for
what's
my
your favorite
channel.
Taylor Swift song?
Oh man. So objectively, I think objectively her best song is All Too Well and Don't
I knew
Crucify
you were gonna
Me,
say
but
that one. Yeah.
the normal version. I think the 10-minute version is like a beautiful like is the better story, but as a song, I think All Too Well, the original is better. Just as a song, the build, the ending, so good. But like subjectively, Sparks Fly has been like getting like the way you move is like a full-on rainstorm and I'm a house of cards. You're the kind of reckless that should send me running, but I know that I won't get far. Are you kidding me? And she wrote that when she was 19. So good. I love Sparks Fly. Red is my most important song because it's the song that like made me a Swiftie. I have a story that I tell about it all the time because Red, I got the CD in 2012 from my friend whose name was also Taylor, and I was leaving the UK to go back to Poland. And as a parting gift, she gave me the Red CD, and she was like, "This girl is also called Taylor, and she's also blonde, and she also has a fringe." And so whenever you listen to the Red album, think of me. And I thought that since the album is called Red, Red is the most important song. And so I started listening to the album like with Red. And I just like, I love that song. And it's like my first Taylor Swift love song and song that I loved. And it was actually, she played it on the piano at my show. And so the fact that the
That's
song
fantastic.
that got me into her played at my show, I was like, yeah, I love it. I love it. I think Would Have, Could Have, Should Have is so good. Better Than Revenge is so iconic. But Cornelia Street live in Paris version breaks me.
I
And
really
Call
like
It What You
Cornelia Street.
Want.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, sorry, for Call It What You Want. She says, I want to wear his initial on a chain around my neck, not because he owns me, but because he really knows me. And my boyfriend got me a necklace with his initial on a chain.
It's nice. I'm going to tell you a quick story about a concert thing that happened with music with my favorite song. So I don't know how well this is going to show up. I have "Fly from the Inside" tattooed on my arm right here, which is my favorite Shinedown song. It doesn't really show up, but anyway, it's "Fly from the Inside," and they stopped playing. That was like their first single from like 2002, and they stopped playing it for like a really long time because they have like 8 albums. So for the longest time, they didn't play it anymore. And I was at a concert of theirs in the front row, and they played the song for like the first time in like probably only like 2 or 3 years, but I had never heard them play it. And I was just like so stoked that they were finally playing the song that I just like put up my sleeve and was just like, yeah. And then Brent came over, like the singer came over and pointed at it and got the cameraman to come over and like show my arm. And I had a bunch of friends, like, because it was a music festival. So I had a bunch of friends just like scattered around the grounds, and they all started texting me and were like, hey, is that you up there? Because they recognized my tattoo.
Beautiful.
So I was like, that was a really good moment. So I
So
understand
beautiful.
the how great you felt when she played that Red on the piano.
I have like my reaction videoed, and that video is never seeing the internet because I'm so melodramatic. But yeah,
You melodramatic? Nah.
okay, I don't want to get you demonetized.
See, Bookborn listens to one Shinedown song, you know.
I'll add it to my Spotify.
I
Sound of Madness.
I
Just for you,
danced.
Kyle.
Yeah, I danced to a Shinedown song for my first dance at my wedding, so they mean a lot to me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway, I do have to actually get going, but it has been great talking to you,
Sorry.
and the chat has been fantastic. No, this is great. And we'll definitely do it again because I did not yell at you about A Song of Ice and Fire enough, and you didn't yell at me about The Witcher enough. So we have plenty of future to do. But anyway, guys, thanks for coming in, and I will try to make these more regular because I should work less in the future. So thanks, everybody. See you later.
Bye.